3 years ago Earth entered the era of spiritual awakening, and the world raced to study the new power as some awakened extraordinary abilities to fight monstrous threats. Now a man collapses, blood spilling from his mouth, glaring at Lee and asking why she betrayed him before pain cuts him off. She tilts her head, notes he is still alive, then turns to a dark energy radiating man approaching. She greets Yuto, who says the final game is ending, wraps an arm around her, and tells the fallen man all his teammates died by his hand and he is next. He asks if Shinji has any last words, and despite his wounds Shinji swears he will never forgive him. Yuto laughs that it won't matter once Shinji is dead, then drives a brutal kick that sends him flying toward a pack of fang beasts below. As they close in, flashes of his dead comrades fill his mind, and blaming himself, he swears that if there's another life, he'll drag Lee and Yuto to hell. He plunges into the abyss where a colossal monster waits, his curse echoing, when a glowing blue interface appears and a mechanical voice announces the Supreme Martial Arts Acquisition System is activated, detecting critical condition and insufficient existence points, initiating time reversal to a random point. Countdown 3, 2, 1. A soccer match plays on TV, and as the ball hits the net Shinji's eyes snap open in shock. He springs up from the couch, sweating, and checks the time, 2:35 p.m. A system notification appears, player data loaded, select attribute. Staring at the interface, Shinji realizes he's alive again with a god-tier system. His resolve hardens as he notes, he's been sent back 1 month before the spiritual awakening, when the world is calm but spiritual energy is already stirring. Soon humans, animals, and plants will mutate, spiritual fruits will grant abilities, and strange items will surface, making anyone who absorbs their power stronger. Determined, he looks out the window and decides 1 month is enough to grow powerful. He opens the system introduction showing attribute development, skill addition, point exchange, and daily missions, then immediately chooses the fire attribute for its offensive strength. A notification appears, preparing the fire attribute skill, and golden light bursts out as he gains a purple tier skill, Brahma Crystal Inferno, along with 5 bonus attribute points. A pinkish-purple crystal forms above his palm, and when he clenches his fist, it shines brightly as flames erupt around him. His phone rings, showing Amora Lee, and he answers. She asks for 200,000 to buy a bag, but he refuses sharply and ends the call. In a luxury car, Lee frowns at his response while Yuto laughs and asks if she upset her wallet. Lee glared at him, muttering she didn't understand what Shinji was trying to do. Yuto reminded her she was supposed to maintain a good relationship with him, but she clung to his arm, saying the only one she cared to please was him. Yuto smiled, stroked her hair, and told her to try on the outfit he bought earlier, but she hesitated. The scene shifted to a hospital where Shinji, looking exhausted, cursed that if he'd been reborn a few days earlier, he could have asked which hospital she was in. He had already checked 3. A hazy memory surfaced of sitting on a grassy hill with a young girl who said she thought she was just sick, so her father made her take out supplements until her ice-type spirit core was destroyed. Shinji stood in silence before determination filled his eyes. This time he would protect Mika and her spirit power. Inside the hospital room, a heart monitor beeped steadily as doctors gathered around the bed, one frowning and asking why her vitals were stable. Her body temperature still would not rise as Matsumoto pleaded with Dr. Lee to save his daughter. Dr. Lee checked her pulse, asked if she had traveled recently, and learned they had gone to Iceland last month to celebrate her college admission, returning last week before this began. He diagnosed excessive yin energy that needed to be countered with yang energy, said he would prescribe medicine to be taken exactly as directed, and warned that delay could be fatal. Matsumoto thanked him, but Dr. Lee said recovery depended on her will. Shinji suddenly burst in, drawing surprise. Matsumoto asked who he was. A young doctor wondered if he was Dr. Lee's student, but Dr. Lee said he had no students. Another doctor told him civilians were not allowed and staff moved to remove him. Shinji broke free and told Matsumoto his daughter was awakening ice-type spirit power, a rare attribute, and wrong treatment could destroy her future. A nurse scoffed and told them to throw him out, but Dr. Lee ordered them to stop, then asked how Shinji knew about ice-type spirit power and who he was. Shinji knew the old man understood something but stayed cold, saying who he was didn't matter, only saving her. Dr. Lee noted that if Shinji spoke this way, he must have a method. Without replying, Shinji walked to the bed and recited a prescription of 2G ginger, 2G enite, 5G cinnamon bark, and 1G codenopsis. The room fell silent as staff realized it matched Dr. Lee's prescription exactly, and wondered if Shinji knew traditional medicine or had eavesdropped. Dr. Lee said the prescription alone would not wake the girl, but Shinji raised a hand, saying one crucial ingredient was missing: Stardew flower. The air went still as Dr. Lee repeated the name, admitting it could indeed wake her but no longer existed in the world. Another doctor remarked that if it was gone, then everything Shinji said was meaningless, questioning where he had learned this. Mr. Matsumoto stepped forward, eyes tense, telling Dr. Lee that if the Stardew flower was needed, he would pay any price, but Dr. Lee shook his head, saying it was not sold anywhere and described it as star-shaped with deep blue petals, silver pollen, and a soft starlight glow at night, its essence able to heal wounds and ease pain, though now it existed only in ancient texts from when Earth was full of spiritual energy. Matsumoto, near shouting, demanded if his daughter would remain like this forever, but Shinji stepped up, firmly stating he would save Mika without leaving a scar. Dr. Lee's eyes lit up, asking if Shinji truly possessed the legendary flower, and Shinji calmly confirmed it. A young doctor scoffed, calling it impossible and accusing him of overhearing the prescription, but Dr. Lee countered by asking how he knew of the flower, leaving the young doctor fumbling for an answer, suggesting Shinji might have made it up or seen it in a game, while Shinji closed his eyes with a long sigh. Inside his mind the system activated and opened the points exchange menu, fully unlocked, asking which item to redeem. Shinji thought of the Stardew flower, a chime sounded, and 5 points were deducted as a small box appeared. He opened it to reveal the glowing blue flower and, glancing at the arguing group, told them to look at the real thing. Silence fell as all eyes went to it, and Dr. Lee, shocked, asked how he had obtained such a herb. Shinji raised the box and asked if they now believed he could save Mika, prompting Dr. Lee to apologize and urge him to use it. Everyone gathered at her bed as Shinji looked at her unconscious form, then brought the flower closer. The air around her lit with blue light as energy specks entered her body, her vitals stabilized, and a nurse reported her temperature rising. A doctor, stunned, said it was working as Mika's condition stabilized and her eyes slowly opened. She looked up weakly, her lips trembling, and Shinji told her to rest, assuring they would meet again. Mr. Matsumoto was told to care for her so she could regain strength, and with tears in his eyes he gripped Shinji's hand in gratitude. As Shinji turned to leave, Dr. Lee asked him to stay for tea, but he declined, saying maybe another time. Dr. Lee then asked for his name, and with a casual wave, Shinji introduced himself as Fuji Shinji. Night fell, and in a dim room lit only by a computer screen, Shinji sat staring at the monitor, recalling a website from his previous life that listed cultivation levels. He searched and found it, Electric Elevation, showing detailed stages from Level 1 Spirit Awakening, Level 2 Soul Rooting, Level 3 Energy Conduction, Level 4 Core Formation, Level 5 Mystic Manifestation, Level 6 Sky Ascension, Level 7 Sage Dominion, to Level 8 Imperial Servant, each with traits and powers, and he studied the screen intently. In his past life a war for spiritual energy erupted, and when he fell he had only reached Level 3. The scene shifts to him meditating in a hot spring, steam rising in a dreamlike veil as a faint flame-like aura of spiritual energy swirls around him, and he thinks the heavenly flame frenzy technique is truly on another level. Closing his eyes, he resolves to dedicate this life entirely to cultivation and to reach the realm of the Imperial Servant. Elsewhere, a man approaches Dr. Lee, asking if it is true he met a Shinji with the Starlight Bloom who already possessed spiritual energy, and Dr. Lee confirms it, addressing him as Chairman Liu. Hope flashes in Liu's eyes as he says the Shinji is a natural talent who could change the future of the world if he grows stronger, handing a photo to the woman beside him and ordering her to measure the boy's strength, which she accepts with a bow. Excitement fills his voice as he calls this a miraculous discovery. Back at Shinji's cultivation, he suddenly shouts, flames bursting violently from his body as he stands with fists clenched, crimson fire wrapping around him, and seeing the change in his physique, he remarks that as expected of a purple-grade technique, one session has already brought him to Level 2. Stepping from the hot spring, he notices the water turned black and wonders how it became so filthy after one day without bathing, but his thought is cut short by a growl from his stomach. He quickly dresses and steps out into the cool night breeze, streetlights casting long shadows as his footsteps echo on the quiet road. High above atop a street lamp, a figure stands motionless with a data sheet in hand, razor-sharp eyes fixed on him, muttering that she has found him before drawing a circular moon-like weapon enveloped in violet energy and hurling it with a thought, telling herself not to be disappointed. The weapon shoots forward at terrifying speed and explodes midair in a violent blast of energy, from which emerges a giant violet demonic wolf with crimson eyes and razor-sharp fangs. Shinji faces it, his eyes flashing as he mutters that the mutations have begun. Seeing the monster dog, Shinji stays calm, raises a hand to block the stench of its breath as the wolf-like beast charges in to bite, but he leaps into the air to dodge, only for its massive tail to slam into his leg, knocking him back. Pain shoots through him, but without pause he declares it will die and his fist bursts into flame as he unleashes Emperor's Fist, the blazing strike falling like a meteor and engulfing the beast in fire until it collapses in an explosion of ash. Hunger hits him instantly. Perched on a nearby streetlight, a girl watches in disbelief, realizing he has awakened a fire-type ability famed for its unmatched offense. She hurries to the corpse, notices the tail is broken, recalls the earlier bone-cracking sound, and realizes it came from the monster, not him, a thought that chills her as she wonders at his durability. The next morning in his apartment, Shinji wakes sore, decides he must train harder, and an emergency news broadcast appears on the TV. A morning news report announces record-breaking temperatures at Mount Shiranui, urging all tourists and residents to evacuate immediately and warning that false claims about the heat-draining body moisture are dangerous, as the cause is identified as an atmospheric anomaly. Shinji steps closer to the screen, recognizing it as the awakening of fire-type spirit energy, and seeing it as the perfect chance to absorb it. He quickly dresses and rushes outside, only to find Lee at his door demanding 200,000 to buy a bag. Annoyed, he thinks she should be in a hospital instead of shopping and recalls telling her to stay away the day before, but she insists she will stop caring about him if he refuses. Not wanting to waste time, he shouts for her to go and never show her face again, leaving her unsettled. At Mount Shiranui, the temperature has soared, the mountain glowing red like overheated iron. Despite the area being cordoned off, crowds gather as police warn that the internal temperature has reached 81 degrees Celsius and entering will cause instant combustion. Skeptics remain, and one man tosses an ear of corn into the zone, causing it to instantly pop into popcorn, shocking the onlookers as some push forward while others yell for them to stop. At that moment Shinji arrived, perching atop a vehicle and observing the scene with satisfaction as he confirmed the area was saturated with fire element spiritual energy, then leapt down without hesitation and dashed into the mountain. Seeing someone rush into the danger zone, the crowd panicked, yelling it was too dangerous and telling him to come back or he would die. Inside, his expression changed as he realized the fire spiritual energy was far purer than expected, and absorbing it brought searing pain as though every cell in his body burned, yet he continued with fierce determination, vowing silently to become stronger. Outside, the crowd grew louder, pointing out that his body was glowing and flames shot from his eyes, which made him realize he was drawing too much attention, so he moved instantly, transforming into a streak of light and disappearing deeper into the mountain, leaving onlookers stunned and wondering if they had witnessed a god or celestial being, some regretting not recording it. Meanwhile, police noticed the mountain's temperature dropping rapidly, and one officer speculated in fear whether he was a deity or something more terrifying. In a luxurious room, Chairman Liu watched the televised reports of the mysterious young man at Mount Shiranui whose presence seemed to calm the chaotic weather, then immediately called to order all news coverage about the event to be stopped, warning that if word spread further it would cause public panic. Turning to the man behind him, he confirmed Shinji had defeated a monster with a single punch and was unaffected by its attacks, then narrowed his eyes and said they must recruit him before other factions acted, finally deciding he would personally go to meet Shinji. After absorbing power from Mount Shiranui, Shinji returns to his apartment to continue cultivating, reaching level 2 by morning when the system announces he has unlocked a new attribute slot as a reward for entering the Spirit Spring stage, allowing him to add and train a new attribute. Before he can process this, another notification reveals the spell fusion feature, enabling him to permanently fuse an innate attribute into a weapon with durability based on its material. Excited, he checks the system panel, realizing he can now forge his own weapon, and rushes to the kitchen to test it on his utility knife, but a knock at the door stops him. Wondering who would visit at this hour, he opens it to find Chairman Liu, who calmly introduces himself as Liu Jinhu, head of the Spiritual Cultivation Association, they stating they came to discuss matters of spiritual cultivation. Shinji, stunned by the association's name, recalls in his past life that he and Mika once received help from someone tied to them, but in this timeline sees no link. Taking the business card they offer, he studies Liu warily, intent on knowing how they discovered him. Chairman Liu takes out a photo of Mika and says Shinji had recently treated her, a fact learned from Dr. Lee, adding she has already joined the association. Shinji lets them in, and after brief talk Lu invites him to join, but Shinji refuses, saying he will decide after spiritual energy fully returns. Yu warns that his Stage 2 breakthrough was luck, and without their guidance he cannot reach Spirit Spring soon, adding Earth will face major changes where cultivating will be the only way to gain strength. Yu explains that the association's guidance is crucial, sharing that she once refused their offer and failed to awaken for 3 years, but after joining she succeeded in under a year and surpassed the Spirit Awakening stage in 3 more. Shinji, surprised, asks her age, and she replies she is 21 before questioning why he asked, prompting him to give a thumbs up and call her a genius, though he privately doubts her potential. Yu confidently says all association members are geniuses. Chairman Lu adds that Shinji would receive strong support if he joined, but a phone call interrupts. Lu answers and hears a report of a level 2 beast 30 kilometers away, possibly poison attributed and in the form of a giant snake. He orders the entire area sealed and for them to head there immediately. Lu ends the call and turns to Shinji, apologizing as he leaves with Yu, saying they will discuss the matter later. Watching them go, Shinji reflects that he no longer feels the helplessness he once did and has reached the early stage of the Spirit Spring phase, though he knows future breakthroughs will be harder. He checks his phone map, wondering if there's another place rich in fire-type spiritual energy, when a sudden late-night call startles him. Annoyed, he answers, only for his friend Kotoj to panic about his house being haunted. Thunder has rumbled behind it all day without a drop of rain. Narrowing his eyes, Shinji suspects thunder-type spiritual energy and asks for details. Kotoj describes a darkened sky and constant thunder, begging for help. Certain now, Shinji recalls that spiritual energy attributes come in 3 tiers: common, water, fire, wind, earth, rare ice, light, darkness, thunder, and legendary space-time. Having unlocked a new attribute slot, he sees this as a chance to acquire thunder energy. He tells Kotoj to guide him to the mountain behind his house and keep everyone away until he arrives. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a tall woman named Kaori orders 2 men to follow, announcing their first mission: to reach a mountain where a powerful source of thunder energy has awakened and collect it before it disperses. When Shinji reaches the mountain, the sky is swallowed by dark clouds, and flashes of lightning tear through the gloom in rapid succession. The sight makes his chest swell with excitement, the air itself alive with currents of power. There is no doubt, this is lightning-type spiritual energy. The system's voice echoes in his mind, warning that lightning is a rare attribute and will require twice the usual spiritual energy to enhance, asking if he wishes to proceed. Staring at the glowing interface, he answers with a confident smile, pressing accept without pause. A moment later, the system announces the activation in progress before congratulating him on acquiring the rare lightning attribute, blue variant. Holding the crystal tightly, he feels its raw force humming through his palm, the blue hue radiating an energy as fierce as the storms above. As expected of a rare element, this lightning power is now his. A massive lightning bolt slams into the ground nearby, while elsewhere a group tries to absorb lightning-type energy. Watching the sky's strange display, they question if it's even possible to collect such power. A blond man lifts a thermos flask with doubt, asking if it can hold so much energy, but Kaori orders silence, takes the flask, and raises it to absorb the raging storm. 2 men behind her cheer at her skill, yet cracks quickly form on the flask's surface, startling her as she realizes it might not withstand the energy. Before it can explode, the blond man yanks her away just in time, saving her from harm. The sky roars again, lightning striking the ground more violently, prompting Kaori to order the 2 men to run as the energy spirals out of control. Suddenly, a strange sound comes from the distance. Following the noise, they spot Shinji approaching, and Kaori stares at him in shock, wondering why a civilian is in such a place. Kaori's surprise shifts to concern as she warns Shinji the area is extremely dangerous and he must leave immediately, but he ignores her, eyes on the lightning-charged sky, sprints past the trio into the strike zone, and is hammered by repeated bolts. The onlookers shout that he's done for and wonder if he can't hear, yet he doesn't flinch, leaving them stunned that no ordinary person could survive it. And even the experienced Kaori starts suspecting he has the rare lightning attribute. Possessed by very few, fully engulfed in surging arcs and racked with pain, Shinji lifts his head and roars that they cannot defeat him and tells them to listen carefully. Shinji declares that not even the heavens can stop him nor the earth bury him, vowing to make his name echo across the world where neither gods nor demons can halt his steps, and his eyes blaze with determination as lightning crackles within them. He throws back his head, screaming while drawing the lightning into his body like a wrathful deity seizing power from heaven and earth until the storm quiets and a faint glow radiates from him. Feeling the rush of newfound strength, he hears the system announce his successful absorption of fire and lightning spiritual energies and offers to fuse them into the legendary Thunderfire attribute, and without hesitation he accepts as crimson flames and bluish-purple lightning erupt and swirl around him before merging into one. Shinji stands wreathed in flames laced with violent lightning, the fusion complete and his body radiating a fearsome, majestic power. The unexpected legendary attribute surges through every vein, leaving him awestruck. The scene shifts to an abandoned factory under a storm-dark sky, rain pelting down as three figures wait outside. Yu listens as the man beside her reports only one mutated beast inside, a giant snake. She nods, noting it's a poison type, then hands 2 crystals to her companions, instructing them to break the jade inside if in danger to trigger a protective barrier, warning against reckless moves. The men nod and prepare before they enter the pitch-black interior, where massive red eyes flash from the shadows. Yu shouts a warning, but the serpent lunges, striking one man and hurling him back. The other retaliates, freezing its massive body in ice. They think the fight is won, but Yu's instincts say otherwise. She orders them to run. The ice explodes, the snake roars, and a cloud of green toxic gas engulfs the 2 men, dropping them instantly. Yu tries to call headquarters, but the poison overtakes her before she can speak, and darkness claims her. After Yu's signal was lost, Lu Tinho hurried to find Shinji, explaining the situation with urgency and pleading for his help, saying only he possessed the strength to end this threat. Studying the report on the rare poison attribute snake, Shinji felt a pang of regret. Had his attribute slots not already been full, he would have claimed it himself. Lu pressed on, stressing that the girl's life was still uncertain and that their only hope lay with him, the one who had awakened the fire attribute. Shinji frowned, questioning how Lu knew of his power, and Lu, scratching his head with a faint smile, admitted assigning someone to watch him, who had witnessed his victory over the mutated dog. Realizing the creature had been released as a test, irritation flickered in Shinji's gaze as he accused him of spying. Lu defended his actions as necessary for public safety, then promised to end all surveillance if Shinji took on the mission. With a firm look, Shinji agreed, demanding the monitoring stop immediately. Lu clasped his hands in relief, vowing to honor the deal and offering to supply whatever number of people Shinji required for support. The offer from Lu was tempting, but Shinji, confident in his newly acquired power, declined, saying he alone could destroy the snake. Inside the factory, Yu slowly regained consciousness, still alive despite the unknown circumstances. Dizziness made her stagger, and when she opened her eyes, she saw the area shrouded in green toxic gas and the giant snake evolving by absorbing the cultivator's energy. Realizing the danger, she struggled to her feet, but the snake noticed her and lunged with its mouth wide open, revealing sharp blade-like teeth. Yu quickly channeled her strength into her right hand, unleashing a burst of cold energy that formed a sharp ice pillar aimed at the snake, but it shattered instantly against the creature's thick scales, leaving her stunned at how powerless her once proud ability felt against it. Before she could react, the snake lashed out with its tail, sending Yu crashing into the ground, coughing up blood and paralyzed from the impact. The snake had completed its evolution, and despair surged through her, thinking all might be lost. At that moment, a familiar voice spoke, noting the coincidence of the factory and a past job, and Yu looked up in disbelief to see Shinji walking toward her, casually mentioning that Chairman Lu had sent him to save them but asking where everyone else was. Ignoring his question, she shouted for him to leave, warning that the snake had evolved to Tier 3, far beyond his level. Shinji, unfazed, sighed and said he would handle it, turning toward the massive snake with eyes gleaming in challenge. The snake roared and lunged with jaws wide open, and Yu cried out for him to run, but Shinji smiled as red flames and crackling lightning twisted across his body, declaring he would destroy the darkness with the power of thunder. As the giant snake lunged at him, Shinji delivered a devastating punch to its head, causing a deafening explosion that hurled the massive beast backward into the factory wall, blowing a huge hole through it. Realizing it was no match, the snake tried to escape, and Yu, frozen for a moment, quickly shouted for him to go after it. Shinji smirked, saying it wasn't going anywhere, and shot forward like a bolt of lightning, unleashing a blinding fusion of fire and thunder from his hands that reduced the fleeing snake to ash instantly. Yu gasped, realizing he had awakened both fire and lightning attributes, a dual awakening considered a miracle even within the Cultivation Association. Shinji reflected that in his past life the association helped civilians, and now perhaps revealing his power wouldn't be bad. Calmly, he confirmed to Yu that both attributes were awakened. Back at headquarters, Yu reported the situation to Chairman Liu, who stroked his beard thoughtfully, realizing why Shinji had asked to stop monitoring him, and decided they must invite Shinji to join the association. Yu, confused, asked about stopping surveillance, but Liu only smiled strangely and asked if it was time she found herself a boyfriend, leaving her wide-eyed in disbelief. Inside the office during a meeting, a man suggested to Chairman Liu that they announce the revival of spiritual energy, noting that recent incidents were becoming frequent and could no longer be hidden, while another man argued that such an announcement would cause social chaos, and the first countered that it could have prompted timely evacuations during yesterday's factory incident. Though the other replied that the situation had been resolved, the debate continued while the chairman stayed silent. Then he addressed everyone, acknowledging that without Fuji Shinji's help, he might have lost his daughter and subordinates and that residents could have been harmed, but announcing spiritual energy's revival would also create upheaval, so he proposed using several marked locations where revival had been confirmed as test sites, promoting surrounding areas for tourism to monitor public reaction and decide future steps. Which the men agreed was a good idea, and the chairman then raised a book to discuss inviting Shinji to join the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association as a spot leader, prompting some to argue that giving him such a high position immediately might upset lower-ranked members, but the chairman stressed Shinji's dual lighting and fire abilities and the risk of angering him if given a low position, leading others to suggest a test to measure his abilities so that, if suitable, everyone would more readily accept him as spot leader. This really raised the chairman's eyebrows as he warned everyone to be careful and not regret their suggestions later. While at home, Shinji woke up thinking a thief had broken in after hearing a strange voice, walking through his house angrily, cursing about being broke and having to buy cheap instant noodles, and shouting that he would teach the thief a lesson if caught, but it turned out to be Yu mopping the floor, greeting him good morning. Which cooled his anger, though he demanded to know why you were in his house, reminding Yu that yesterday you agreed not to monitor him anymore, and Yu lifted cup noodle boxes, saying you had come to live with him, making his eyes widen as he later rested on the sofa, asking if you wanted him to take the test, to which Yu confirmed, while he thought about having only 3 days left until the big spiritual energy revival and initially refused. But Yu explained the test was specially prepared by the Association for Cultivators, in a recently revived spiritual energy area, mostly with new members, and a chance to meet comrades, prompting him to recall that Mika would be participating and decide to join as well, thinking he had business with her, while elsewhere, the chairman addressed his team, warning that peaceful lives were ending in a world where death was coming, and introduced an advanced spiritual energy cultivator as captain for the training. As Kaori remembered seeing a figure wrapped in lightning and wondered about the captain, joking with a companion who assumed he was just some rich kid, while friends cheered for Ken, and Kaori warned him not to cause trouble, and Yu explained to Shinji the team composition, 5 members, 2 women and 3 men, noting that apart from Mika's eyes attribute, the others were common, and that Yushir Ken, formerly involved in the underworld and awakened to the mint attribute, had a rough personality and resisted orders, which Shinji acknowledged, just as the chairman announced that the captain had arrived. As Shinji arrived, everyone's eyes widened, realizing he was the one the dead had said helped them, and Kaori remembered the figure wrapped in lightning spiritual energy on the mountain, while the chairman introduced him as their new captain, prompting Yushir to question whether Shinji was truly capable and whether they would be burdened by him, to which Shinji challenged him, asking if he wanted to try. And an angered Yushir replied that he would not hold back. Shinji asked if a bubbling spring-level fighter could handle him, prompting Yushir to shout and charge, radiating electrical energy. But before he could strike, the chairman stepped in, holding Yushir's fist and asking if he intended to defy the association's orders, leaving Yushir taken aback as he argued that leaders must demonstrate their abilities to earn respect. While others agreed that in their world cultivators' strength demands followership, the chairman reminded them that Shinji had proven his power by single-handedly subduing a giant snake and saving them, warning that anyone who disrupts discipline would be expelled, and then explained that their next mission was to defeat a creature called the Throne Beast, a humanoid capable of free movement, cautioning that on the path of cultivation, death is always near. The group moved into the forest, Shinji thinking this must be the spot the chairman mentioned, though he saw no sign of the monster and wondered if it was underground. The girl asked if he was still moving forward or listening, and he noted that as they neared the big tree, the spiritual energy grew stronger, though he still sensed nothing of the creature, instructing everyone not to get too close and to search the area for clues, which the girl acknowledged. Yushir teased if Shinji was nervous, joking about the tree suddenly walking, while others laughed, and Shinji warned that anyone ignoring his instructions would be responsible for themselves. Yushir went to inspect the tree, marveling at its powerful spiritual energy, and a friend suggested they could train here, leveling up directly with it, while Shinji thought that if he absorbed enough energy to reach level 3, even they would have to follow him. Yushir imagined being surrounded by girls, saying they should train while they could, and the group sat around the tree to meditate. The girl asked if they would be okay, and Shinji assured her he would handle anything that happened. Kaori reminded him they had met a few days ago, on the mountain during the lightning revival, and he asked if she had been there for fun, which made her annoyed as she explained they had been dispatched to subdue the lightning energy but had been scolded afterward because no one believed her reports about someone absorbing the energy. Shinji acknowledged her concern and told her and the girl they should train here too, noting the abundant spiritual energy, and when the girl asked if he would train, he said the energy did not match his attribute, so it was fine if just they two trained, which Kaori agreed to. A strange voice echoed, and the three turned toward it, seeing the tree lift a branch that moved like a tentacle, Yushir's friends wrapped and hanging upside down. Shaken, Yushir shouted, asking what was happening, while his friends screamed for help. He raised 2 fingers, wind swirling around him, and dashed with his dagger, striking the branch in all directions, gritting his teeth in disbelief as he cut it and freed one friend, only for them to warn him of an attack from the left. Another branch struck Yushir, throwing him far, and he recalled the chairman's warning that once on the path of cultivation, death is always close. As the tall tree readied a final strike, Shinji intervened, cutting all the branches and telling Yushir to get out of there. Yushir clenched his teeth, saying he couldn't run and leave his comrades behind. Shinji smirked, noting his guts, and Yushir insisted a man who abandons his comrades is the lowest of the low. Shinji bent down, infused the dagger with his lightning flame attribute, making it glow blue, and without a word threw it at the front of a branch. The tree released all the men it had trapped, roaring in pain. Shinji urged Yushir to hurry, warning the monster was about to show itself, and just then, a massive bubbling spring level 3 thorn beast appeared. The men shouted in shock, and Shinji reminded them of Chairman Lu's words that the path of cultivation always carries the risk of death. The monster threw daggers and lashed tentacles, but Shinji dodged effortlessly, closing the distance as the tentacles burned from his lightning flame. He shouted lightning flame fist and punched the monster's head, making everyone gasp at his strength, while Mikasa thought heroes in novels must be like this. In the system room, officials marveled at his power, and the chairman asked if anyone still opposed making him spot leader, receiving no objections. Suddenly, the place shook, people panicked, and a voice reported that the Earth's spiritual energy had fully recovered, threatening to upend the world. Meanwhile, Shinji stood in the forest, analyzing the situation and noting that the thorn beast must now possess a wood attribute, while Mika had ice, recalling her connection to the place. Suddenly, a surge of blue light erupted from below, flowing upward as if the earth itself was releasing energy, and everyone's eyes widened. Shinji realized the earth's spiritual energy had fully recovered, gusting powerfully with an ice attribute from a huge depression in the ground. He thought back to Mika, remembering she had lacked the strength to fully absorb such energy in her previous life. Mika stared at the depression, awed, and said, "Captain, that's incredible. You made the surrounding spiritual energy explode with a single hit." Shinji instructed her to absorb the ice attribute energy from the cave to grow stronger, and she nodded, ready. Shinji mused that together, they could become even stronger and take revenge for past failures. One of the group pointed out the ice attribute energy matched Mika's own, making it an ideal training spot, and everyone agreed to wait. Later, the group gathered around a table brimming with food, toasting to Mika for advancing from Rumbling Spring level 1 to level 3 in a single effort. Mika smiled, thanking the captain and everyone else. Yushir stepped forward, apologizing for his earlier disrespect, and Shinji reassured him that his courage to defend his comrades mattered more than pride. Yushir, moved to tears, swore to dedicate himself to the captain, but Shinji simply said they would work together as comrades in the same squad. Just then, A booming voice ordered all personnel to evacuate immediately. Soldiers and civilians rushed to clear the area, and Shinji noted that the soldiers were not ordinary. They radiated spiritual energy, clearly cultivators. He thought the chairman should be overseeing the spiritual energy management, but for now, the priority was evacuation. The guard stepped forward, aiming his gun at Shinji and warning him to move away immediately, his tone sharp and unyielding. Yusher flared up, shouting that the guard had no idea who they were dealing with and how strong their captain was. The guard didn't flinch and trained the barrel on Yusher's neck, telling him to back off or die. Yusher ground his teeth, seething at the audacity. Shinji raised a hand calmly and said, "Stop it." 3 hours ago, in a round conference, people debated how to handle the sudden recovery of spiritual energy, noting they were unprepared, and agreed the most urgent task was capturing the escaped mutant dog, with one officer reprimanding lax surveillance but stressing the priority was civilian safety. Kawasaki was assigned the mission, saluting and promising to capture it by tomorrow morning, while the rest were ordered to move to the borders as spiritual energy had fully recovered. Kawasaki, speaking through a walkie-talkie, coordinated the evacuation of the east side, unsure when the mutant dog might appear, and saw Shinji on the screen, who instructed his group not to cause trouble for the military, and they began to leave as Shinji warned that from this afternoon, the world would become extremely dangerous and reminded Mika to continue her training to strengthen her foundation. Kawasaki called out to Shinji, revealing he was a high school mate, and teasingly claimed to be his big brother, prompting smirks from Kaori and farewells from the group as they departed, with Shinji impressed at Kawasaki's promotion to military executive. Kawasaki then explained the situation. Spiritual energy on Earth had recovered, but the mutant dog had escaped and was hiding nearby, so the area was sealed off to protect civilians, making it clear why the military had been dispatched. Shinji saw the mutant dog fail and fall into the trap and realized this was a perfect chance to observe the military's capability, asking to watch, while Kawasaki saw it as an opportunity for Shinji to experience the dangers of the world and instructed a guard to guide him to the safe zone around the hunting ground. The guard reminded Shinji to follow his instructions, and Shinji complied, sitting cross-legged in the safe zone and noting that the soldiers, though armed, had spiritual energy mostly at Bubbling Spring Level 1, appearing quite capable. Suddenly, a soldier monitoring the area shouted that the huge mutant dog had appeared, surrounded by a purple glow, and the squad opened fire, but the attacks barely harmed it as purple energy emitted from its mouth. Tension rose as another soldier was caught in the energy, and Kawasaki shouted that the dog was trying to evolve and had to be stopped immediately to prevent the squad's annihilation. The squad charged but could not get close, being pushed back as the mutant dog evolved drastically, and Kawasaki clenched his teeth, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control. Kawasaki stood before the mutant dog, gritting his teeth as it evolved, already battered from earlier attacks. A soldier behind him shouted for guidance, and Kawasaki barked back that they had no choice but to fight. They couldn't let civilians get hurt, and commanded the special forces to charge. The mutant dog's sheer power swept them aside, sending them flying. Kawasaki's head slammed against the rubble, blood streaming down his face as the dog advanced with small, piercing eyes. He braced himself, thinking he might die, when suddenly Shinji appeared, striking the dog with a surge of lightning. Kawasaki could hardly process what he saw. Shinji warned the beast that attacking his friend would cost it its life, electrocuting the creature and hurling it far away. Kawasaki gasped, realizing Shinji was a cultivator too, but Shinji waved it off, saying they could talk later. The soldiers murmured in awe at his strength, stunned that a single hit could wound a level 4 Bubbling Spring mutant dog. Levitating, Shinji forged a sharp weapon of light and struck again, forcing the dog to vomit blood. Kawasaki, now supported by his troops, marveled at Shinji's lightning attribute power. The dog lunged at him again, but Shinji infused a knife with both electric and flame energy, cutting it cleanly in half. The soldiers watched in disbelief, commenting on the terrifying potential if he continued absorbing spiritual energy. Kawasaki smirked in admiration, acknowledging Shinji's incredible strength, while Shinji stared at the knife, now reduced to ashes, realizing even military-grade weapons couldn't withstand his lightning flame. Kawasaki rushed forward, asking if he had been hiding his true power all along. Kawasaki nudged Shinji with his elbow, saying he couldn't believe someone so strong had hidden it all this time. Shinji warned him not to move too much with his injuries, then supported him by the shoulder. Kawasaki turned to his soldiers, saying the cleanup was theirs and he needed to talk to Shinji, and they saluted. Later, in a nearby building, the woman asked if Kawasaki's companion was his friend. He replied that they were closer than that. They trusted each other completely. She thought that recruiting someone like him into the military would be a huge boost. She asked if he had been invited to join, and Kawasaki explained he'd already joined the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association. She made a note to inform Lu Jinghu immediately. Meanwhile, Shinji returned home with a burger and a drink, realizing he had forgotten breakfast. The woman on the couch asked about the military operation and his involvement. He shrugged, saying he only got involved because his friend was hurt. She warned that the commander-in-chief's daughter had been calling the chairman non-stop, insisting on meeting him. Shinji raised an eyebrow, asking if this was some matchmaking attempt, and she warned him to be careful for the next few days. Just then, Kawasaki's phone rang. He answered, identifying himself as Fuma Natsuki Kawasaki Sr., and told Shinji he knew a place where intense fire attribute spiritual energy was surging. Shinji's eyes widened. Fire attribute energy could help him strengthen his abilities, and he smirked, already thinking of his next move. It all began when a fireball appeared during a night patrol at the construction site. Workers, suspecting some evil spirit, called for a minimal exorcism, but instead of weakening, the fireball grew larger and more intense, soon engulfing the entire site. The military sealed off the area, yet nothing could contain the flames, which had grown even stronger since the spiritual energy had fully recovered yesterday afternoon. Fuma briefed Shinji while driving, explaining that evacuation zones were expanding to minimize casualties. Shinji asked if the fire was still spreading, and she confirmed it. Then she brought up Lu, hinting at recruiting him. He protested, saying she was only sent to monitor him, but she calmly explained the urgency. With spiritual energy fully recovered, capable cultivators were needed to maintain national security, though most were difficult to manage. Kawasaki had told her about Shinji's conduct and skill, making him ideal to train newcomers. She offered favorable treatment if he agreed, but he declined, insisting his priority was overseeing the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association's personnel. She understood, acknowledging his principled nature. Upon arriving at the site, soldiers warned the crowd to stay back from the dangerous area. Yuto spotted Shinji and questioned his presence, and Shinji shot back, asking why he was there. Yuto teased that Shinji resembled Lin's unborn child, while Lin smirked, blaming him for wasting her chance. Onlookers joked about the quarrel, cheering for the pure love warrior, which annoyed Shinji. Fuma nudged him, asking if he was okay, and he brushed past, calling Yuto a mere rubbernecker as they moved forward. Yuto remained standing, silently rejected, while the crowd laughed. Lin seethed at being humiliated by Fuma's confidence and beauty, vowing to make her pay. Lin noticed Yuto staring and scowled, snapping, "How long do you plan to glare at me?" He rested a hand lightly on her waist, apologizing, saying it's an occupational habit. Lin thought bitterly, without money, you'd have been tossed aside long ago. Meanwhile, Fuma updated Shinji, saying the first insight had grown even stronger, and the warning zone might need expanding. He asked if it was still spreading, and she confirmed, explaining this was the place she mentioned yesterday, where fire-attributed spiritual energy was concentrated, swirling with a blue aura unlike anything around. She clicked her watch, showing a device measuring spiritual energy concentration, and told soldiers to extend the cordon another 10 kilometers. Then someone noticed Shinji moving toward the fire and shouted in alarm. But Fuma realized he wasn't trying to control it, he was going to absorb it. Shinji sat cross-legged in the center of the massive blue flames, letting the energy surge into him. The wind whipped around, forcing others to shield their faces. Fuma marveled at his aura, wondering what level he might reach. Bubbling spring level 4? Maybe even level 6. After a tense moment, the system confirmed he had fully absorbed the fire energy, now reaching level 2, and granted him a bonus, one chance to develop a new fire attribute technique. The notification rang out, announcing that Shinji's fire attribute spiritual energy had reached level 2 and that he could now create a new technique. He stretched out his arm and tapped a symbol on the screen. His eyes widened as the name appeared, Eternal Sacred Flame, a golden fire attribute technique. Because it was his first golden technique, he earned a bonus 10 points. The description explained that with training, he could store fire energy in his body and release it in attacks, covering a wide range. Shinji muttered to himself, satisfied that he had absorbed every last bit of energy, while the wind whipped violently around him. Fuma watched in awe, thinking about the sheer scale of what he had just done. A soldier nearby whispered, "No way, is he the reincarnation of a fire god?" After a while, Shinji walked toward Fuma, smiling relaxedly, and she rushed to check on him. He reassured her that he was fine and thanked her for bringing him there. When she tested the energy with the device, it ignited instantly, and a blast went off behind them. Shinji instinctively shielded Fuma, and she smirked, already plotting how to get closer to someone so formidable. Later, over dinner, she asked about his current level, and he replied probably bubbling spring level 4, soon reaching level 5. She expressed surprise, and he explained that his training methods were unusual, but she waved it off, respecting a cultivator's secrets. She then invited him to reconsider joining the military, promising better treatment, but he declined, saying he wasn't interested. She accepted his answer, noting she would have to report today's events to her superior. That night, Shinji saw a message from the chairman requesting his help on a shadow examination mission, and he agreed to go the next day, while Fuma silently noted the concern. In the morning, Shinji woke to the smell of food, impressed by Fuma's cooking. When he entered the kitchen, he was surprised to see her with dumplings and cheese, and he yelled in disbelief. She calmly explained that his house had been registered as a military secret location, but he shot back, insisting she not act without permission. Later, when he went to her room, it was empty, and a voice from behind informed him she had already left, probably anticipating his arrival. Shinji noticed the file open on the shadow extermination mission and muttered to himself, "Do not tell me she's going in alone." He threw on a jacket and started moving out. Fuma called after him, asking where he was rushing off to, and he replied sharply, "You're in trouble, I need to see the chairman right away." Meanwhile, Fuma was in the water, swimming deeper, thinking she couldn't do anything without Shinji. She held her breath and pushed forward, forming massive crystal shards with her power. Relief washed over her, she had done it, but she hadn't noticed the enormous fish behind her, its teeth the size of Yu's body, looming dangerously close. Shinji tried to attack the massive fish, but it was channeling dark magic. A coil of purple energy wrapped around Fuma, and she clenched her teeth, panicking as the monster tried to drain her spiritual energy. She struggled upward, but the beast struck her with its arm, and she spat blood, sinking into the water, thinking she might be eaten. At that moment, a lightning strike from above revealed Shinji. He dove into the sea, scooped her into his arms, and asked if she was all right. She urged him to retreat, warning the monster was absorbing spiritual energy, and he held her tighter, promising to evacuate her first. Jumping from the water, he delivered her safely, and Fuma took over, carrying her to the hospital while Shinji vowed to handle the monster once she recovered. At the hospital, she lay on oxygen as the chairman clasped Shinji's hand, expressing gratitude, saying without him, his daughter might have died. Shinji replied he was glad he arrived in time and asked about the mission. The chairman explained the shadow mission had been monitored for 6 months. Initially, fewer than 10 people practiced spiritual energy cultivation there, so the monster remained hidden. It was a darkness attribute creature, absorbing surrounding spiritual energy and hiding in the deep sea. With spiritual energy fully recovered recently, it had grown abnormally strong, and immediate action was required to protect civilians. Shinji raised a finger and agreed to help, but said he had one request. At Fuma's house, she was about to take a bath when her grandfather called. She asked why he was sending Shinji on such a dangerous mission. From the phone, he said this was the first trial for both Shinji and the nation. She argued that even a highly skilled team might not handle it, noting the military had dispatched a platoon of bubbling spring level 3 or higher cultivators who still struggled. Her grandfather explained they had no choice and that he had assigned 3 elite members to assist Shinji. With the Earth's spiritual energy recovered, the balance of power was shifting, and failing to act could leave the country vulnerable. The shadow was an A-class danger zone, and subduing it would demonstrate the nation's strength. Fuma worried for Shinji's safety. Meanwhile, Shinji prepared at the car, removing the cover from his sword. Mika, sitting in front, asked why she was the only one coming along and where Ather was. He handed her a file, saying she was the only member among the 4 to reach bubbling spring level 3, and it was also a test of her training. Mika promised to do her best and not hold him back. Shinji reassured her, telling her to think of it as training, especially since the military would be providing backup. When they arrived at the port, the driver announced their arrival. Shinji and Mika dismounted, and a man greeted them, noting the young cultivators were impressive. Shinji asked if he was military, and the man introduced himself as Kuraki, warning them not to hold the team back. Mika protested, pointing out he didn't know Shinji's abilities, but a female colleague stepped in, urging cooperation and focus. Another man signaled it was time to move, and Shinji told Mika not to take their words to heart and to focus on the mission. She nodded, and the entire group leaped into the sea, beginning their swim toward the mission. As they swam deeper, Kuraki groaned, feeling his spiritual energy being drained, while the other man warned it was the corrosive effect of the darkness attribute. The girl muttered that staying here too long would shorten their lives, and all around them, purple energy strings twisted and coiled. Mika, grimacing, whispered to the captain that she felt like vomiting, the underwater stench overwhelming. Shinji took a deep breath, lightly tapping her back and forming a protective bubble around her. She looked at him in awe as he explained he had blocked the darkness attribute's effect from that point onward. He thought about the others, hoping they weren't panicking. Kuraki noticed Shinji and Mika surrounded by electric currents, seemingly unaffected, and realized they were using all their spiritual energy to shield themselves, risky if attacked. Suddenly, a massive fish appeared, and Kuraki warned of the monster approaching. Mika raised her palms, releasing blue energy, but Shinji pushed her back, telling her to stay calm and observe. Kuraki leapt, striking the creature and sending it flying, but Mika immediately pointed out it was an illusion. Strings of dark energy shot into the sky, and an enormous octopus-shaped monster emerged, far larger than a human, a bubbling spring level 5. The girl gasped at its size, realizing why their comrades had failed. Determined not to disappoint Shinji, Mika leaped with her icicle dance technique and slashed her frozen sword at the monster, and for a brief moment, it seemed entirely encased in ice. Mika smirked, telling the captain she had done it, but in an instant, the ice shattered and Kuraki shouted for everyone to run. Tentacles lashed out, hitting them midair, and the men vomited blood. Mika maintained her protective layer, but she felt herself sinking deeper, thinking this was useless. Am I going to die here? Just then, Shinji appeared, intercepting the tentacles, telling her she did well but to be more careful. The woman watching noted he had stopped the attack, while the others stared, questioning if his spiritual energy was fire attribute, though unlike any fire they knew. Kuraki gawked at the overwhelming power, wondering if it could really be Shinji's. Standing resolutely before the monster, Shinji said they had lost time with its tentacles, and now it was his turn, eager to test his newly drawn golden technique. He drew his sword from its cover, radiating brilliant gold, and drove it into the monster's head. Kuraki's eyes widened in disbelief, thinking stabbing a bubbling spring level 5 creature with a sword like that would be useless. But Shinji focused, calling out holy fire, immortal technique, and the sword erupted with blazing energy. Within seconds, the entire area was engulfed in flames, and the monster burned violently, leaving Kuraki stunned, whispering in shock at the power he had just witnessed. In the office, the men murmured among themselves, noting that the commander-in-chief's praise of Shinji seemed true, questioning why he was given special treatment without any military training. The chief replied calmly, "Kuraki, I understand your concern, but Shinji's ability cannot be ignored. Other cultivators may seem unreachable, but compared to him, they are like infants. We must bring him to our side and never make him an enemy." Out at sea, Kuraki recalled the chief's words, wondering if such innate talent was truly human, and if properly trained, how terrifying Shinji's growth could be. He glanced at Mika, noting her calm composure even in danger, and her bubbling spring level 3 at such a young age hinted at huge potential. Turning to Kuraki, she asked if he was all right, and when he admitted he was lost in thought, the man beside him laughed it off, suggesting a drink later to settle things. Kuraki swam toward Shinji, apologizing for his earlier rudeness, and Shinji waved it off, telling him there was no need, as he had only worried about everyone. Mika, holding her nose, urged them to leave quickly, and everyone began swimming upward, but Shinji stayed behind. Mika asked why, and he said there was something he needed to check. At that moment, a man introduced himself, Takito Light, a bodyguard for a young lady, handing Shinji a business card and explaining that if she caused trouble, he could be contacted. Shinji recognized the name immediately, Fuminatsuki, the commander-in-chief's daughter, and thought she was the only one who could have such a bodyguard. He asked if the commander needed him and what about his companions, and Light explained that Mika had been escorted home, and Kuraki and the others returned in military vehicles. The purpose of waiting was to meet the commander-in-chief, and Shinji followed him to a car. Inside, Fuwa greeted him, acknowledging he had heard about Shinji from his granddaughter, and invited him to sit. He inquired if it was true that Shinji could store fire power within his body, and Shinji confirmed. Fuwa remarked that with spiritual energy restored, nothing surprises him anymore, and it was fortunate a strong individual like Shinji had emerged independently of military or government support. Shinji smiled modestly, insisting it was just luck. Fuwa nodded, saying, "Not too humble, not arrogant either. You're level-headed, just as my granddaughter judged. Shuji-kun, the world is changing. What was once abnormal is now the norm, making life hard for ordinary people who cannot adapt." Shinji replied calmly, "Don't worry. If anything happens to ordinary people, I won't abandon them." Fuwa continued, "I'm not pressuring you, but I want you to grow fast among all lightning cultivators. The dark attribute is the most dangerous. It corrupts life, turning beings into mindless monsters. Your lightning is best suited to control it. For your own sake and for the country, I want you to train harder and grow stronger." Shinji nodded. "I understand. I will dedicate myself fully to training." Fuwa handed him a phone, explaining it's a secure military executive line, and if he ever needs help, he can call. Shinji accepted it, thanking him, then added, "Actually, there's something I'd like to ask. The weapon the chairman made for me, though I thought it could handle my energy, it didn't." Fuwa examined the sword, realizing it was a treasured weapon of Lu's, and said, "I understand. Leave it to me. I'll prepare stronger swords for you in a few days." Shinji bowed in gratitude. As he dismounted from the car and watched it drive off, he reminded himself not to let his guard down even for a moment. He called Chairman Lu, who answered immediately. Shinji asked what was wrong, and the chairman said urgently, "Shinji, Lu is in trouble." He asked, "What happened?" In the hospital, doctors crowded around, their voices tense and urgent. One shouted that her heart rate was dropping, another told them to stop yelling and focus on absorbing the dark attribute spiritual energy from her body. But someone else argued it was useless, she'd been in a coma too long, and forcibly taking her energy would make it go berserk. Panic spread, and outside the chairman was near tears, muttering that it was all his fault. Shinji arrived, asking if he was all right, and the chairman explained her sudden collapse, blaming the dark attribute energy, which had caused her to doubt herself and act recklessly on the mission. Shinji's system prompted him to touch her for 3 minutes to find a way to save her. Ignoring the protesting doctors who tried to push him away, he stepped forward, holding her hand and commanding the system to search for a solution. The screen flashed with a notification of search initiation, while the doctors shouted, demanding he leave, insisting no one could be saved this way and calling for security. Shinji remained determined, knowing time was critical. The chairman stepped in, giving permission for Shinji to act, asking if anyone had objections. The doctors hesitated, insisting they needed to treat her wounds immediately, but the chairman commanded them to let Shinji try, warning that if he failed, it would be as if they were personally responsible. The doctors stared at him in disbelief, silently questioning who he was to make the chairman speak so decisively. The system finally completed its search and suggested a treatment: grind grand stardew flower into powder, introduce it into her body to disturb the ice and dark attribute balance, and inject Shinji's lightning attribute spiritual energy to gradually purge the dark attribute while carefully maintaining the balance. The process would take around 3 hours, and constant contact with her body was required. Shinji told the chairman he needed everyone else to evacuate, explaining that he could cure her but could not guarantee their safety. The doctors protested, but Shinji's electric energy began to pulse around him, and the chairman ordered them to comply. Alone, Shinji infused the stardew flower into water and guided her to drink it. Her body glowed and trembled, pain coursing through her as he steadied her by the shoulders, promising she would survive. Hours later, she finally opened her eyes, and Shinji, standing close, reminded her not to act so recklessly again. She hesitated, feeling that she must be a burden on him, but Shinji reassured her that she was not. He was strong, yes, but she was far from weak. She reflected that before meeting him, she had thought herself the strongest, even capable of surpassing his father's power. Shinji turned, saying he was going home to rest after a sleepless night, and that tomorrow they would begin rehabilitation training. The next morning, she fought a mutant wolf and defeated it with ease. Shinji, observing silently, evaluated her skill, noting that the wolf had been at the peak of Bubbling Spring level 3, and her effortless victory confirmed she had risen to bubbling spring level 4. She teased him to stop flattering her, insisting she knew her own strength. Bismarck suggested wrapping up, but a sudden booming voice cut through the forest. She asked what it was, and a message appeared: intense dark attribute spiritual energy detected. Shinji said calmly, "This is no ordinary explosion." He sensed a rampage of dark attribute energy deep in the forest. Yudo told Lin he would catch a big fish later and they could have it grilled on skewers, but she snapped rudely that she did not want any of it and walked toward her friend saying she would help too, when a man came from the side asking what was wrong with Lin, and Yudo explained she had been like this since seeing an incredibly beautiful woman a few days ago, making the man laugh and tease him about drawing her. And Yudo admitted she was insanely beautiful, prompting the man to say he was curious and wanted to help, but before that Koki came and pinched his ear, telling him to help with the tent in silence, and he protested saying she did not know how much he loved her, and as they left, Yudo decided to gather twigs and went deeper into the forest, where he saw a glowing purple flower and remembered the news that the World Union announced Earth had entered an era of spiritual energy recovery, giving opportunities to contact spiritual energy worldwide, and feeling hypnotized by the flower. He shouted that this was his chance to become king, vowed to make Fuji and Shinji regret their actions and kneel before that woman as they did with Lin, then started chewing the flower as an immense surge of energy filled his body. Yuto's whole body turned red, and he felt more sinister than before, when from afar a voice shouted for help as his friends were surrounded by wolves, but with his newfound energy, Yuto slashed through them in one move, asking if they were alright, while Lin warned him there was a whole pack, yet he laughed, calling them nothing but insects, leaving Lin shocked and questioning how humans could possess such power, while others cheered, noting the news fuss about him, and Lin thought a strong man like this suited her perfectly. Meanwhile Shinji warned of approaching dark attribute spiritual energy, and Yu confirmed feeling it, telling them to hold hands and jump onto a thick tree branch above as a pack of mutant wolves ran below, noticing the wolves' cuts and wounds and realizing they were infected by dark energy. And when Yu suggested reporting to the chairman, Shinji said they needed to investigate first, then jump down, promising not to threaten civilian life, extending his hand to release blue energy that struck the wolves, then told her to move on, and they walked to a campsite, when Yudo suddenly leaped at Shinji who blocked him with a shield, but Yudo attacked Yu instead, admiring her beauty like the last woman and asking to go for a drink, and when Yu asked why he attacked Shinji, he laughed, saying he taught him a lesson due to their history, while she challenged him about his strength, prompting Shinji to ask if he became a cultivator through an attribute, and Yuto's sinister laugh confirmed it, declaring he was a full-fledged cultivator, dismissing the danger to weaklings, ignoring Shinji's warning that he had attacked the peck earlier which could have harmed many, and as Shinji decided talking was useless and action was needed, Yuto laughed, saying Shinji had revealed his true colors and he would show him what a real cultivator was. Yuto laughed violently, his whole body radiating and pulsating with a red aura, while Shinji remained calmer, his body glowing with blue energy. Realizing this energy probably put him at bubbling spring level 2, amazed that a single fruit could evolve someone so much in a world where spiritual energy had recovered, and when Yuto tried to attack from behind, Shinji blocked him, prompting Yuto to laugh and admit he had skill, but when Shinji taunted him, Yuto grew furious, shouting die as he launched punches and kicks, all blocked or dodged by Shinji, which frustrated him further. And Shinji remarked that Yuto was too weak whether cultivator or not, then struck him in the face, sending him crashing to the ground, leaving Yuto's friends shouting for him while Lin wondered when Shinji had gotten so strong and regretted breaking up with him, and Shinji ordered their capture and interrogation while Yu agreed to contact the chairman and seal off the mountain, as Yuto fumed at losing Shinji, hearing a voice asking if he hungered for power, and suddenly found himself in a strange place before a throne where a figure sat, shouting for overwhelming power to make Shinji kneel, when the demonic figure struck his forehead with dark energy, painfully absorbed by Yuto as he cried for power, and while hypnotized, Yu appeared commanding him to follow the Cultivation Association, but Yuto woke up emitting a burst of purple dark energy that struck his friends, with Shinji pushing him back and warning him, as Yuto felt demon-like, radiating intense energy and absorbing his friends' energy, leaving them terrified and shouting. And Shinji realizing the commander-in-chief had been right, while Yuto fully transformed into a demon-like figure, declaring he had returned to this world, jumping from bubbling spring level 2 to 4 instantly, prompting Shinji to warn that he was probably no longer human, as a message appeared declaring Junior Dark Attribute Demon Lord detected, with a mission to defeat him for a new spiritual energy attribute slot, and Shinji, recalling his past life, admitted he had never seen a monster like this and had no idea what attacks it might use. Yudo said the quality of these humans' flesh and blood was too poor for him to manifest fully, noting that the electric energy in the two bodies was substantial and if he devoured them he would recover great power, deciding to start with the woman who seemed weaker, and shot an arrow toward you, but Shinji stepped in, his eyes turning yellow as he blocked it with yellow flame energy, prompting the demonized Yudo to acknowledge the block as luck, while Shinji asked who he was and what had happened to Yudo, and the entity said it was too early for humans to know and the only choice was to serve or die, causing Shinji to remark that proper conversation was impossible, and the entity laughed at his defiance, declaring it would show the ultimate darkness, raising its hand as the area swirled with dark energy that formed a circle around Shinji and lifted him, while you, tense, shouted to help and fired blue energy at the dark sphere, which had no effect, and the entity taunted that such attacks could never break through and told him to stop resisting, but from inside the dark energy Shinji's hand emerged, surprising the entity, and he burst through, asking if that was seriously all it had. The entity laughed, calling Shinji a foolish brat and mocking him for thinking he could fight just because he broke the seal of the dark space, and from behind you shouted that you would fight with him, but Shinji told you not to move, saying he only wanted to test his full power, and when you asked what he meant, he clenched both fists as yellow energy surged from him and he pushed his palm at the entity's head, creating a massive blast that sent it flying far away and embedding it in stone, where it complained about being blown away by a weak human, prompting Shinji to taunt it for being scared, yet the entity lashed back, threatening to kill him, slashing with its hand, but Shinji dodged and blocked it with fire energy, leaving the entity furious that one hand blocked its attack without damage, and Shinji remarked that he did not even need full power, disappointing the entity, which clenched its fists, realizing it could not die yet and needed to devour more humans to gain power and revenge, while Shinji charged with full force, electrocuting the entity's nerves and hand, telling it had discarded most of its body to survive, and from behind you asked if he was okay. He replied that part of the monster had escaped and instructed you to contact the chairman immediately, which you acknowledged, and meanwhile in town, due to a cold front, the dews faded and the Metropolitan Emergency Agency issued a heavy rain warning, advising people to stay indoors to avoid a possible major disaster, while a girl walking on the road muttered that it was all his fault for the ruined plans, then heard a strange voice, turned to look, and suddenly found her location changed, realizing she was facing the approaching battle radiating the same energy as the entity, as bats began flying toward her. The girl closed her eyes, but a blue light suddenly struck the bed and hit the ground, and when she looked up, she saw Shinji warning her not to go outside because it was extremely dangerous until the sky cleared, while the sky above was filled with countless beds, and seeing Shinji, she felt herself falling in love with him, as he took out a phone and called, telling you to monitor the situation, explaining that the escaped dark attribute creature had split into countless beds to escape and was absorbing spiritual energy from humans to evolve, noting that some had reached Bubbling Spring Level 2 and were still preying on people, realizing the beds intended to use the townspeople as fuel for evolution, and if all reached Bubbling Spring Level 3 and the monster revived, it would be disastrous, prompting him to think of a solution before that happened, while the beds, with their hidden eyes, planned that if they devoured all humans in the town, they could recover to peak strength, and then properly thank the human before slowly torturing and killing him. The military arrived quickly, all soldiers armed, while online, keyboard warriors posted frantic messages about giant bats crashing into windows, wondering if it was the end of the world, and Fua sat with her team complaining that people should just stay home instead of posting, shouting that they should cut off the internet, but a man explained that would cause panic and worse consequences. And when she asked if the military had been deployed, he said it had been 30 minutes, but all roads to Amanami City were blocked by level 3 bats, making a quick breakthrough impossible, leaving her worry for Shinji. While inside a building, Shinji and Yu arrived, and the group greeted him, confirming everyone was alright, as a woman explained that she and Kaori were training when the chairman called, and a man recounted fending off a bat during dinner with his brother, which Shinji told him was fine to roast but not to eat. And at the office, the chairman noted Shinji's presence and suggested starting the military meeting, instructing Fua that if her team was ready they should focus on Amanami City, where rescue operations were hindered by numerous mutated bats, and a massive energy reaction had been detected at the civil hall in the southeast, believed to be the source controlling the mutants. As everyone sat down, Shinji noticed Kaori shivering and wondered what was wrong, while an announcement outlined the plan: force entry from the eastern highways, secure a route, launch a large-scale bombardment to subdue the area quickly, and evacuate the city, with Civilization Association members taking a separate route to the Civil Hall to assist. Stressing that the operation must finish within 5 minutes or the entity at the Civil Hall would become uncontrollable, a man checked his watch and asked if there were questions, and the girl raised her hand, asking Commander-in-Chief Fuwa if the bombardment would be delayed if the military couldn't reach the hall on time, to which he replied there would be no delay, warning that if the dark creature evolved, casualties would extend beyond the Civil Hall to the whole city or country, leaving the girl speechless and shivering, and when asked if she had family there, she said yes, wrapping her hand around Kaori and promising to save them. Noting her skills had improved thanks to Shinji's special training, while the man suggested calling her brother to pick them up, but the general said Kaori would have to sit out the operation because swaying could affect mission success, and though Chairman Liu hesitated, Shinji interrupted, pointing out a fatal flaw in Fuwa's plan, explaining that Mayor bombs would not damage the monster since he had seriously wounded it earlier. And when asked for his plan, Shinji said he intended to use the weapon he had requested a few days ago, ready to deploy it against the monster. At the entrance of the tunnel, the team gathered, Fuma stopping her watch and saying she would deliver it to Shinji to protect Amanami City's citizens. The announcement repeated over the comms. All troops were ordered to begin the operation to exterminate the unknown creature in Amanami City, starting from the eastern route entrance and targeting the Civic Hall. A man explained the mission: escort the weapon safely. The operation split among 5 squads, no matter what. For the sake of everyone in the city, the team sprinted into the tunnel, immediately encountering swarms of bats. They fought back, but the bats were powerful, wounding several soldiers. The girl shouted for everyone to follow her, grimacing from her own injuries but determined that they would survive. Darkness enveloped the tunnel, the bats swarming all around. In the middle, Shinji stood, crackling with electric energy, muttering that he would have acted sooner if he'd known it would get this chaotic. Mika called for the team to wait, unleashing an ice spike strike while you combined it with a water dragon surge, freezing their enemies together. You wondered aloud how many bats were in the city, and Mika explained that they absorbed spiritual energy to replicate. If the black hole combined them, their strength would be astronomical. Shinji remained calm, saying they could not beat him in the forest, so even a full merge would fail, and the immediate priority was reaching Mr. Fuwa at the Civic Hall. Finally, a battered group emerged from the tunnel, bruised and compromised, but still moving forward. The team froze as Yuto stepped forward, blocking their path, smirking and saying the beautiful lady belonged to him. Fuma snapped, furious, demanding if he knew how many innocent civilians had died, but he shrugged, saying he didn't care. Trash couldn't survive in this world anyway, and she should feel honored. Enraged, she leaped high and kicked toward his neck, but it barely affected him. He sneered, purple dark energy swirling around him, saying that with their arrival, he could reach full power by devouring them, and that she would become his nourishment. Just then, a bright light erupted, forming an icy shield around Fuma, as a voice warned that their young lady would not be taken, forcing Yuto into a defensive stance. He hissed that judging by the energy he felt, she had already reached bubbling level 5, and consuming her would make him stronger than ever. The light urged Fuma to proceed to the meeting point with Shinji while it held Yuto back. She hesitated, warning to be careful, but he snarled he wouldn't let her go. More icy peaks shot up, blocking her path, as the battlefield around them erupted in chaos. Bats swarmed, soldiers were attacked, and Fuma fired her bullets desperately, noticing some bats had evolved beyond their usual limits. Worry flickered in her mind about whether they could deliver the weapon in time, or if Shinji could even reach them. Suddenly, one of the evolved bats lunged at her, but before it could strike, Shinji appeared in the middle of the fray, eyes blazing, and she felt the air shift as the scene erupted in a burst of energy and blood droplets. Fuma looked at him, worried, asking if he was all right. Shinji gently patted her head, saying that now that he was here, there was nothing to worry about. He asked if she had secured the weapon, and she confirmed, explaining that it was from her grandfather but she didn't know much about it. Shinji revealed a glowing red sword, and she gasped, asking if it was truly that incredible. He nodded, saying it was a weapon of destructive power, and turned toward Kawasaki, telling him to clear the way. Everyone stepped back as Shinji activated the sword's magic fusion, causing it to shimmer red, flames and lightning wrapping around it as he swung in wide arcs, cutting through the bats effortlessly. Kawasaki laughed, impressed as ever, while Fuma cheered, asking if anyone else had been harmed. Shinji nodded toward the ongoing fight, noting that Light was currently engaged with someone named Yuto. Fuma pleaded, urging Shinji to help Light. Shinji's eyes narrowed, realizing that Yuto was dead, the dark creature thought to be gone. Could he have come back to life? Meanwhile, Light struggled as Yuto hovered above, bats swarming him and blocking his vision while leeching his remaining spiritual energy. Some of the bats had already evolved to level 3, forcing Light to form a thick ice shield, but the relentless onslaught cracked it, leaving his hand wounded from Yuto's dark energy. Yuto smirked, teasing Light for keeping his distance, and as Light launched a sharp, arrow-like attack from his eyes, Yuto enveloped himself in purple energy, absorbing it to evolve further. Laughing, he sent a powerful purple strike toward Light, who closed his eyes, apologizing silently to Fuma, but before it could hit, Shinji intercepted. The blast missed him, detonating harmlessly to the side, and he turned to Light, asking if he had spoken. Light, clutching his wound, asked if Fuma was safe. Shinji reassured him, telling him to join Fuma and handle the bats while he dealt with Yuto. Light nodded and moved forward. Now Shinji faced Yuto directly, demanding to know who he really was. Yuto laughed, claiming it was him, but Shinji's expression hardened as he warned Yuto that if he refused to speak, he would finish him without hesitation. Yuto called out, taunting Shinji about his power in the forest, and claiming he would show his full strength. He extended his hand, sending bolts of purple energy toward Shinji, who calmly grasped his sword and slashed the dark energy in half, the strike hitting Yuto. Yuto shouted in shock, but then the sky itself seemed to darken as countless bats appeared, moving as one massive swarm. Even Shinji hesitated, puzzled by the sight. Mika, Yu, and Fuma watched in alarm, sensing the energy radiating from the black cloud. Mika confirmed the bats seemed ordered toward it, and Fuma's readings went off the charts. She realized aloud that if the instruments were accurate, the creature looming above qualified as a super mutant level threat, far beyond normal anomalies, capable of massive destruction. She quickly instructed Yu to contact the chairman for reinforcements while she would call her grandfather, determined not to let Shinji face this alone, and Yu acknowledged, moving to act immediately. Meanwhile, back at the office, a man shouted into his radio, "Captain Light, please respond, Captain Light." Frustration and panic rose as the connection with the second platoon remained dead. "Damn it," he muttered, "these belts must be blocking radio waves too, making communication impossible." The chief's mind raced as he wondered whether Fuma and the others had managed to break through the chaos in Amanami City. The man beside him shouted in alarm, noting that the belts were converging in a single direction, asking what might happen next. Frantically, he called out over the radio, "Captain Light, can you hear me? Respond, please respond." Just then, the second platoon's communication flickered back to life, the radio waves returning as the belts vanished. The man grabbed a phone, calling out, "Captain Light, please report your situation." From the comms, a voice responded saying they had encountered belts that appeared to be bubbling, spring level 2. They had been attacking earlier, but now seemed to be gathering. Kawasaki, listening intently, added that the second and third units were reporting the same. The chief's jaw tightened as he tallied the casualties, realizing the growing threat. Another man approached, saying there was incoming communication from Fuma's grandfather. The chief took the phone, asking Natsuki if she was okay. On the other end, the voice rang out in urgency, "Grandfather, it's terrible. A super mutant level entity was about to appear in Amanami City." The chief's eyes widened. Deputy Commander Fuma confirmed grimly, explaining that the beds had disappeared at once, transferring all absorbed spiritual energy to the mutant at the center of the black cloud. The man near the chief gasped, saying it could not be, Amanami City would be doomed. The mutant was at bubbling level 5 or higher, and without cultivators, there seemed no way to stop it. The chief clenched his teeth, turning to Fuma with guilt and despair, murmuring that he could not apologize, but Fuma's calm voice reassured him, repeating that she understood. Determined, the chief ordered, "Attention everyone, begin preparation for weapons of mass destruction. The super mutant in Amanami City must be stopped at all costs, with no allowance for damage spreading to other cities." A subordinate cautioned him to calm down and consider recruiting Fuma, but the chief insisted, "We are soldiers. We cannot reprioritize citizens' safety," and to prevent further damage, sacrifices may be necessary. From the comms, Shinji's voice suddenly rang out, questioning the frantic declarations. The chief's tension broke as he realized Shinji was alive. Shinji chided him lightly for declaring people dead prematurely, and then, scanning the sky, he noted the massive cloud forming like a tornado. Calm but resolute, Shinji declared there was no need for bombs. He would defeat the super mutant himself, no matter its power. The onlookers gasped, stunned by his confidence, questioning whether he was serious against the super mutant. Shinji assured them he was not acting without basis and turned to the commander-in-chief, asking if he would fully cooperate to protect Amanami City and his daughter. The men conferred briefly, then the commander agreed, asking what Shinji required. His only request was straightforward: ensure the military would cover compensation for any damage caused during the battle. Yuto had completely transformed into something demonic, an entity that seemed to siphon the spiritual energy of the world itself. He laughed with a feral thrill, claiming he felt truly alive, having not only revived but evolved to the peak of bubbling spring level 5. Invincibility radiated from him as he boasted, warning Shinji he would regret not being killed back in the forest. With a sudden motion, he hurled a bat toward Shinji, laughing as it soared, but then his expression darkened. From the office, people watched in disbelief, whispering that it couldn't be true. On the battlefield, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck from the sky, slicing a bat cleanly in half, leaving everyone staring in awe. Whispers spread about the legendary lightning attribute, some saying the power before them was more than human. The chief's eyes widened, admitting Shinji had exceeded all expectations. Civilians tried to stay calm as panic and wonder collided, marveling at a human capable of such feats. Mika and Yu exchanged glances, stunned, realizing the young man they had underestimated had been hiding a terrifying power all along, far beyond their bubbling spring level 4. Fuma, focused and composed, thought exactly as she had hoped. The man she had her eye on had proven himself. Above the battlefield, Shinji levitated, his sword extended, his voice calm and steady. Now it's my turn. The entity lashed out with a burst of dark energy, but Shinji blocked it with his blade and executed his Thunder Flame sword technique, mountain and river slash, sending a devastating slash downward. The entity staggered, trying to defend itself with a barrier, but Shinji's strike cut through, hitting the entity squarely in the chest. Pain radiated through the creature, but it didn't relent. Instead, its energy twisted into dark tentacles, all aimed at Shinji. With precise timing, he dodged and sliced each tentacle in half. The entity roared in frustration, shouting that without the sword, it would have finished him long ago. Shinji's eyes narrowed, a wry smile forming as he asked, "Then how about I fight without the sword?" The entity sneered, firing a spiraling, nail-shaped dark energy toward Shinji, but it struck his forehead and somehow deflected harmlessly without him even moving. Shock flashed across its face. "You deflected my strongest attack at bubbling spring level 5 peak without a scratch? No, it cannot be. Have you reached an even higher level?" Shinji's eyes narrowed, calm and resolute. "If that was your full power, then your life ends here." He raised his crimson sword, and red lightning surged along the blade, crackling with electrocuted energy. The entity seethed, thinking it could not die here. It would need to absorb more, evolve even further, perhaps to bubbling spring level 6, maybe even 7 before revenge. Panic mounting, it spun around and tried to flee, but Shinji's voice cut through the air. "I will not let you escape again." With a swift motion, he unleashed his lightning sword guard heaven-shaking strike, striking the fleeing entity mid-air. The blow seared across its body, flames and energy writhing, and it screamed in disbelief. In a flash, the entity disintegrated into ashes, vanishing completely. Back in the office, cheers erupted. "We did it! We defeated the super mutant! Amanami City is saved!" The relief and joy were overwhelming. The chief quickly regained composure. "Now, let's begin our emergency operations. Provide prompt medical treatment to the injured." Everyone responded with a resounding yes, sir. A few days later, Shinji had settled in with the chairman. The older man smiled warmly. "Shinji, the city was saved thanks to you. The military and we are considering a reward. Anything you desire?" Shinji thought for a moment, then said he had one important request. The chairman raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Tell me." Shinji pointed toward the girl, explaining that for the past few days she and her companion had been staying there, disrupting his daily life, and even affecting Mika's behavior. Could you please have them leave? The chairman chuckled, realizing Shinji was indirectly asking for a bigger house since Fuma would never willingly leave. With a knowing smile, he gave a thumbs up. That's easy, he said. Leave it entirely to me. In the office, the discussion shifted toward Shinji's reward for his success in Amanami City. One officer suggested providing him with spiritual energy resources to make him a super cultivator, comparable to the heroes of Western nations. Another added that turning him into an online influencer could boost his popularity, given his youth and talent. The chief dismissed the influencer idea as frivolous, emphasizing that Shinji was not just a local hero but a genius cultivator the nation could be proud of. He proposed giving Shinji a high-ranking military position to train other cultivators. Before the discussion could continue, General Gento entered, immediately putting everyone on edge. He questioned the idea of rewarding a child, dismissing Shinji's feat as mere luck. The officers countered, pointing out that video records of the mission proved Shinji's skill. Gento, however, scoffed and sat down, refusing further debate. The chairman quickly steered the meeting back on track, asking for other suggestions. One officer noted that Shinji had acted selflessly, so fame and titles were unnecessary. The chairman seized the moment, knowing the others had not yet built a close rapport with Shinji. He revealed that, after speaking directly with Shinji a few days ago, he understood the young cultivator's true desire: a larger house. The presence of the girls had been interfering with his daily life, and even Mika had started acting strangely. Shinji simply wanted enough space to live comfortably with you and the others. This revelation struck the room. Many officers admitted they hadn't considered basic housing as a reward. The chief thought Shinji likely wanted to push you and the others out, but decided not to correct him, especially since Fuma might have feelings for him. Discussion quickly turned to suitable properties in Amanami City. Gento surprised everyone by offering a solution, naming Rokuyo Lake in the villa area of Amanami City's Keio district. This immediately raised concerns. Amanami City was under lockdown, and investigations indicated anomalous creatures there had already reached Bubbling Spring Level 6. The chief, incredulous, asked why Gento was bringing up a potential mission in a meeting meant to decide Shinji's reward, pointing out that the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association had no jurisdiction to involve him in such matters. The tension in the room thickened as everyone waited for Gento's explanation. General Gento explained that his point was simple: if Shinji couldn't handle even that area on his own, he wasn't truly deserving of a reward. The chief, frowning, asked if Gento was objecting to the decision, and Gento clarified he wasn't. He merely wanted to witness firsthand the capabilities of this so-called hero. Later, the chairman handed a file to Shinji, apologizing for the delay and interference in arranging his reward. As Shinji opened it, his eyes widened. The property listed was in Amanami City, Keio District, Rokuyo Lake. He froze for a moment, realizing its value must be at least 100 million yen. The chairman urged him that if he didn't like it, he would stake his life to provide another reward. Shinji waved him off, pressing the file to his chest, saying it was more than enough and that he would gladly accept it. The discussion then turned to military matters, with the officers suggesting that Shinji handle the property along with a platoon. Shinji firmly refused, saying he was more than capable on his own. The chairman cautioned him, pointing out that the previous threat had been Bubbling Spring Level 5, and this new one was Level 6, a significant jump even for him. Shinji calmly responded that he was already at Bubbling Spring Level 7, causing the chairman to shout in astonishment, unable to fully grasp the leap in power he had achieved. The tension was palpable as General Gento asked if Shinji had truly agreed to cooperate with the men in charge, remarking that Green Lake had resisted subjugation for over half a month. Could a mere 20-year-old handle it alone? Gento replied that they would soon see the extent of his abilities, hoping his skills weren't just for show, or he might not make it back alive. The man beside him added that Shinji had probably just been lucky in Amanami City, which explained his absence at the award ceremony, while Gento noted that young people like him needed proper guidance from veterans. A woman seated nearby reminded Gento not to let personal feelings interfere. For Amanami City's sake, the operation had to succeed. Soon, they arrived at the villa, and the woman approached Shinji, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you, I'm Sugita, secretary of the mayor of Amanami City," she said, and Shinji responded in kind. Sugita gestured to the men with her, introducing General Gento and Lieutenant Tsuji, in charge of the mutant subjugation operation. Gento's sharp gaze assessed Shinji, asking if he was the one who had defeated the bubbling spring level 5 creature in Amanami City, and Shinji confirmed. Gento admitted he had expected a more rugged, squad-like figure, but instead faced a surprisingly unassuming young man. Shinji countered with a pointed remark: monsters wouldn't go easy on them just for looking tough, which left Lieutenant Tsuji flustered, prompting Gento to cut him off with a stern warning: if Shinji turned out to be all talk, he wouldn't survive the Green Lake Villa. Shinji reassured them calmly, saying practicality mattered more than bravado, and he wouldn't force anyone if he feared dying himself. Sugita interjected, urging cooperation once inside the villa, and Shinji took the silence as agreement, moving to explain each person's role. He briefed them on the recovered spiritual energy, the sudden appearance of dark attribute energy, and the unidentified creature now occupying the building. According to radar, the mutant inside the villa was bubbling level 5. 6 civilian casualties had occurred in previous operations, but the monster had finally been contained. Shinji opened the mansion gate and said simply, "If the explanation is over, shall we go?" Lieutenant Tsuji was alarmed, whispering that he seemed to charge in without strategy, while Gento admitted they couldn't leave him alone. As Shinji stepped inside, he pondered quietly about the new dark attribute slot he had gained from his last mission, debating whether to choose dark or light. Reflecting that he hadn't been this strong in his previous life, he settled on light, reasoning that healing abilities would be more useful than a dark attribute, especially to prevent situations like with you. From behind, the lieutenant called out, questioning whether he had a plan, and Shinji replied that they couldn't plan without seeing the target first. The air thickened with tension just as a mutant dog suddenly lunged from the side. As they moved forward, General Gento stepped in and struck the mutant wolf instantly, sending it hurtling backward. The lieutenant breathed a sigh of relief, murmuring a thanks to Gento while thinking how unusual it was for such a strong mutant to appear even before entering the villa. If this one was already so powerful, what could possibly be inside? Gento barked at them to stay alert, noting that the wolf was at least bubbling spring level 4. Without hesitation, he launched a fiery punch at the creature, his fist radiating heat and energy like a blazing fireball. The lieutenant's admiration grew. Gento truly wasn't holding back, and the wolf was taking serious damage under his relentless assault. Shinji, meanwhile, stayed relaxed, casually asking if they were done here and suggesting they move into the villa. The lieutenant spun around, fuming, unable to believe his ears, starting to object to Shinji's nonchalance. But before he could finish, Shinji drew his sword and with a single decisive slash cut the wolf clean in half. The general's eyes widened in astonishment, realizing the sheer power of the young man. Shinji shrugged and told them to take their time catching up while he went ahead. Gento thought about how Shinji had dispatched the monsters so easily, far beyond what he could manage, and the lieutenant muttered nervously that they might have angered someone dangerous. Gento agreed immediately. They needed to apologize to Shinji, someone they absolutely could not afford to provoke. As Shinji stepped into the mansion, the darkness pressed in around him. He immediately sensed something was wrong and muttered to himself that 68 people had died, yet no bodies were visible inside. Turning to Gento, he asked if the military had removed the bodies, and Gento replied they hadn't. All their efforts had gone into containing the monster, leaving no time for cleanup. Shinji's expression grew serious, realizing that if that was true, the mutant inside the villa could easily be bubbling spring level 5, or even higher. From the surrounding darkness, eyes glimmering red began to emerge, confirming his suspicion. Gento looked at Shinji, a mix of disbelief and concern on his face. "So, you're saying all the bodies that were eaten by the monster?" Shinji replied calmly, "Mutant creatures don't care about flesh, they feed on spiritual energy. They're not afraid of us. Still, let's be careful. We'll split up. Who's checking the second floor?" Gento nodded, saying they would follow his lead. Shinji started up the stairs, announcing he would take the second floor while the general and lieutenant checked the basement. As he ascended, Shinji opened every door, frowning at the emptiness. Even if the bodies were absorbed, bones should remain. Maybe it's time to test the light attribute he had just acquired. As he activated it, his body glimmered with a brilliant yellow, revealing the dark energy lingering in every corner. He murmured, "Okay, I've found it." Meanwhile, in the basement, the lieutenant shivered, saying he had a bad feeling about the place. Gento ordered caution and readiness, knowing the danger lurking below. Suddenly, a monstrous creature leapt from the shadows, its presence radiating pure threat. Gento commanded an attack, and both he and the lieutenant lunged forward, but the creature's sheer power made Gento stumble. The lieutenant soared above with a wind system strike, hitting the creature, but it barely reacted. He yelled in frustration, "How can its skin be this thick?" Before they could react further, the creature spun its tail, hurling Gento against the wall. The lieutenant shouted in alarm, and Gento growled, "I won't forgive anyone who harms my subordinate." Just as the lieutenant tried to strike again, a beam of light descended from above, piercing the creature's chest. Shinji landed gracefully, teasing, "You're taking quite a while for just one dog, aren't you?" Gento gawked, asking if he really killed that monster in one hit. How strong was he? Shinji shrugged, saying the final boss hasn't even appeared yet. Gento, astonished, asked if this was the monster nesting in Green Lake Villa. Shinji exhaled, "No, this was just an avatar. Let me show you the real situation." Instantly, Shinji glowed brightly, levitating as a relentless radiance filled the space, forcing the general and lieutenant to shield their eyes. A projection revealed the shocking truth: countless creatures were feasting on the bodies of men they had thought were isolated. Gento's mind raced, struggling to comprehend how they had fought so hard against what seemed like just one, when so many existed. The lieutenant shouted in alarm, "There are so many." Shinji said sharply, "What are you talking about? This is the monster's headquarters. It makes sense there are numbers like this." Gento frowned, suggesting a retreat to call for reinforcements. They couldn't advance without overwhelming firepower. The lieutenant agreed reluctantly. But Shinji's patience snapped. His voice rang out, "What did you say? This villa is my reward. If you burn it down, where am I supposed to live? Those weaklings are nothing, handling them is easy." The tension hung thick in the air as he prepared to take matters into his own hands. Shinji drew his sword with calm precision, declaring he would end this in a single strike. Without hesitation, he spun the blade in a perfect 360-degree arc, generating a roaring tornado of energy. The whirlwind of his slash cut through the room, scattering the mutant creatures and leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Shinji unleashed the snow returned to its homeland, combining it with the tornado of the red sword and surging electrocuted energy, cutting through every creature in its path with surgical precision. Limbs and body parts flew with each strike, leaving the general and lieutenant stunned at the sheer speed and power. Within a minute, the entire first floor was cleared. The general hesitated, muttering in disbelief at how swiftly the monsters had been eliminated, and the lieutenant admitted he had expected their own deaths. Shinji calmly corrected them, saying the creatures were merely small fry, and the real monsters still awaited. Gento's mind raced. If these were small fry, what were the ones they had struggled against before? He reminded himself that the last military survey had only registered a level 5 signal. Shinji confirmed that meant the villa's monster had evolved further in the past month. The lieutenant asked if they still stood a chance, and Shinji reassured them that as long as they stayed close and followed his lead, they would be fine. Both saluted and said understood. Moving deeper into the mansion, Shinji cut down every creature that crossed his path, the lieutenant and general watching from behind doors, overwhelmed by the cultivator's overwhelming speed. The general noted that Shinji had subdued the entire first floor in under 10 minutes. Then, sensing a shift in the energy, Shinji darted toward the backyard, alerting the others to follow carefully. There, suspended in the air, hung a strange red egg connected by dark threads, radiating an ominous presence. Shinji braced himself, enveloping his body in a blue energy aura, while the general reminded the lieutenant not to interfere, recognizing that Shinji was focusing his full power on what was clearly the final boss of the villa. The lieutenant muttered, questioning what Shinji planned with such immense power and whether this could really be the villa's true master. The general, his eyes wide, admitted he had seen a sight like this only once before. The lieutenant started to comment, but Gento cut him off, nodding grimly and saying it reminded him of Chairman Kinjo of the Amanami City Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association, a bubbling spring level 6 powerhouse. The tension ratcheted as a red, hand-like appendage emerged creepily from the egg. Shinji, gathering every ounce of his energy, unleashed extreme polarization strike, slashing at the hand, but it barely budged. The creature, a massive bird-like dragon, fully emerged, leaving both the general and lieutenant stunned. Shinji smirked, finally facing an opponent with real backbone. The monster spat a red, viscous fluid toward him, which he narrowly dodged. Spotting an opening, Shinji struck with a special windlight technique to the monster's chest, causing a brief yellow glimmer. The general let out a gasp of excitement, but the monster was far from defeated. As it tried to flee, Shinji pursued relentlessly, glowing with yellow energy as though protected by an unseen force. He combined the lightning flame innovation, mountain river single slash with a crisscross attack, striking the bird monster to the ground. The lieutenant stammered, overwhelmed by the sheer strength, while Gento could only nod, realizing Shinji's true power operated on a whole different level. Shinji's eyes narrowed, his voice firm, declaring the villa belonged to him, and him alone. The monster lay on the ground when Shinji raised his sword, declaring he would send it to the other world in one strike. But before he could finish, a strange light shot down and killed the beast instantly. The general exclaimed in awe, but Shinji quickly noted it wasn't his doing, sensing another presence. He called out for them to reveal themselves, and a portal opened, releasing a man who remarked that perhaps killing it wasn't necessary. The general gasped, addressing him as Kinmo-san. When Shinji asked if they knew each other, Gento explained he was the chairman of the Amanami City Spiritual Energy Association, a bubbling spring level 6 powerhouse. He introduced Shinji as a cultivator from Tenkai City summoned by the military to defeat the monster. Kinmo requested the beast's life be spared for research, which the general immediately agreed to, but Shinji refused, stating no one had the right to decide the creature's fate or control his actions. The general reminded him of Kinmo's support for Amanami City's military, and the lieutenant vouched for his kindness, crediting him with saving many soldiers through his light attribute energy. Kinmo reasoned that while the monster had killed many, it would be better to tame it for humanity's benefit, believing all beings carried spiritual energy that could be influenced by love. Placing his hand on the beast, he made it glow green, and its eyes slowly opened. Shinji suddenly unleashed a surge of lightning energy at the monster, forcing it into a frenzy. Kinmo swiftly formed a green barrier to shield it, blocking the attack while noting to himself that this young man's strength was no joke. Demanding an explanation, he asked if Shinji wished to fight him or stand against humanity. Shinji replied that the monster had killed too many and deserved death, that he took orders from no one, and that since Kinmo's arrival, the creature's spiritual energy had changed. When the general asked what he meant, Shinji pointed his sword at Kinmo, stating the beast feared him more than it feared the blade. Kinmo claimed it was natural from the monster's perspective, as both were human, and explained he had created a birdcage to restrain it. Sheathing his sword, Shinji said he would instead use a special light ability to read the memories in its brain, which visibly unsettled Kinmo. The lieutenant asked if such a power was real, and Shinji explained he had gained it after defeating a monster in Tenkai City, allowing him to directly read brain memories with spiritual energy. Kinmo dismissed it as nonsense, but Shinji walked to the monster, placing his hand on it as yellow energy flared and the creature began to levitate. He murmured about tracing further back to find the method of spiritual energy infusion, yet before he could finish, Kinmo attacked the monster with his light. Smirking as if expecting it, Shinji countered with his sword, and the two clashed fiercely. The general shouted at Kinmo in disbelief, but Kinmo coldly replied that since Shinji had uncovered the truth, he now had no choice but to kill him. Shinji confronted Kinmo, accusing him of raising the bird-like monster in the villa. The general looked baffled, while the lieutenant insisted Kinmo had helped the military in the past. Shinji pressed further, asking how the creature had survived until now, and the general reasoned that during previous subjugations, they had never ventured this deep. Shinji scoffed, questioning if they truly believed that, then pointed out how the monster had been trembling since Kinmo's arrival, suggesting he had done something to it. Kinmo chuckled, noting that while Shinji was sharp, clever people often didn't live long. The general, shocked, admitted Shinji was right. Kinmo then confessed the monster was indeed his, but clarified that he hadn't kept it to harm humans. Rather, he claimed it was for the sake of protecting humanity. The general roared at Kinmo, demanding if he understood how many soldiers had given their lives to reclaim Amanami City. Kinmo coldly replied that their deaths had been quite meaningful, as they allowed the monster to advance from bubbling spring level 3 to level 6 in one leap. The lieutenant shouted in outrage, accusing him of using their comrades' lives for an experiment, but Kinmo dismissed them, saying those of low standing could never grasp the vision of someone like him. He claimed that once fully raised, the creature would be able to defeat other monsters and reduce future soldier casualties, and that studying its evolution could even inspire a new cultivator training method. Proclaiming that the monster was now entirely under his control, he ended the discussion with a chilling remark about sending them to the afterlife, releasing a burst of green energy from his fingertips toward Shinji. A notification appeared before Shinji, detecting a powerful light attribute energy, and asking if he wanted to absorb it. He smirked at the thought that he could take in attacks as well and ordered it to absolutely absorb. Instantly, the incoming strikes from Kinmo were drawn into him, leaving the general and lieutenant tense and confused. They tried to rush toward him, but Kinmo casually sent a wave of green light from his hand, striking them and holding them back, then coldly told them to prepare for their death cries, mocking them for treating him like a villain. As the last of the light attribute was absorbed, Shinji's body flared with bright yellow energy, his light level surging from 2 to an astounding 325. He grinned, remarking that coming here had been worth it. He had gained a house and leveled up. In a swift movement, he floated behind Kinmo, shattering the barriers restraining the general and lieutenant, freeing them. The general exclaimed that Shinji had saved him again, but Shinji told him to stay put and watch as he finished this. Kinmo's teeth clenched in frustration, unable to understand why Shinji could move freely when he should have been trapped within the lightning barrier. Shinji scoffed at the idea that a bubbling spring level 6 small fry could contain him but added that he appreciated the level up, so he'd return the favor with an attack. Charging forward, he swung his sword while Kinmo snarled that a brat like him could never defeat him, summoning pulsating green energy from his hand that lashed out like tentacles toward Shinji. With a single sweeping motion, Shinji unleashed his snow-pierced dragon extinction technique, slicing every strand of the green energy instantly. Kinmo tensed, unable to track his speed or movements, and in the next moment, Shinji appeared right behind him. Realizing too late that he could not dodge, Kinmo took the full brunt of the strike, crashing hard into the ground. Gasping in disbelief at the limit of a bubbling spring level 6, he clutched his injured hand as Shinji's blade had cut deep into it, and with a twisted glare, Kinmo swore that he would kill him. Kinmo's body flared with an intense green glow, as he roared that Shinji had truly angered him and vowed to reveal the full might of the highest bubbling spring, level 6. A glowing spell circle appeared before him, and as Shinji calmly remarked that even his full strength would be nothing more than a desperate struggle, Kinmo thrust his hand forward, unleashing holy retribution. Streams of green energy shot from the circle toward Shinji, but each was cleaved apart with precise swings of his sword. Refusing to relent, Kinmo vaulted high into the air, shouting for Shinji's death as he unleashed a massive green sword slash, only for Shinji to sidestep it completely. Kinmo's eyes darted around in panic, demanding to know where he was, just before Shinji's blade struck his back, hurling him to the ground and forcing blood from his mouth. Even wounded, Kinmo refused to yield, declaring he could not lose no matter the cost. His aura shifted, dark and demonic energy flooding his body as great green wings sprouted from his back. With a furious burst, he launched himself at Shinji with his lightning light technique. Shinji met his charge with a cold challenge, raising his sword and channeling the Swamp Snow Valley Creation Extreme Splitting technique. Their attacks collided in a shattering clash, ending with Kinmo slammed to the ground in defeat. Breathless and stunned, Kinmo muttered disbelief, unable to understand how Shinji's power could surpass the highest limits of bubbling spring level 6. Floating down from the air, Shinji dismissed level 6 as unimpressive. Kinmo trembled at the thought that Shinji might already be beyond him despite the spiritual energy's recent revival. Shinji, unfazed, declared he had plans to attend to and would send him to the afterlife now. Kinmo's desperate thoughts of unfinished ambitions were cut short, as Shinji called him scum and said his twisted spirit would only vanish in death. His blade struck without hesitation, silencing him for good. The lieutenant stared in shock, questioning if he had truly been defeated, while the general marveled at Shinji's power. Landing lightly, Shinji suggested they check on the bird. But as they approached, a sudden flash of green light from Kinmo's remnants struck the creature, prompting the general to grimly state that they should kill it. Shinji calmly replied that the creature was not only a monster but also a victim, then lifted his hand and released a burst of yellow energy toward it. The bird cried out in pain, writhing under the blast, but Shinji reassured it that he was no longer the man he once was and had no intention of causing harm, only to help. Almost instantly, the creature's demeanor shifted. Its form shrank and transformed into a small, adorable owl, leaving the general and lieutenant wide-eyed in disbelief as they shouted in surprise. The tiny owl fluttered onto Shinji's shoulder, and while the lieutenant demanded to know what was going on, Shinji stroked its head, admitting he didn't fully understand either, only that when he tried to heal its light attribute wound, this was the result. The lieutenant then asked if he could use his ability to see the past to explain it, but Shinji confessed that had been a bluff meant to deceive Kinmo. When both officers insisted they had seen images earlier, he clarified that it was merely Kinmo projecting his own memories through light attribute electricity, something he had simply let them believe. Turning away, he said that with this matter settled, they should head back since he had countless tasks ahead, including repairs to the villa. The general, still eyeing the owl, stopped him to ask if he truly intended to keep it as a pet. As Shinji walked on, he remarked that he had no intention of keeping the owl as a pet, though its obedient nature made him consider letting it guard his garden, or perhaps letting the military care for it instead. The general quickly raised his hand, insisting that the military lacked the funds and, more importantly, that after Shinji's efforts to restore it, they couldn't possibly take it away, adding that the creature would likely be happier with him. Shinji told him not to sound so desperate in refusing, saying he had only asked, but the general insisted that taking Mr. Fuji's spirit beast would be far too presumptuous. Nodding, Shinji decided to bring it home and see how his housemates reacted, promising that if they objected, he would hand it over to the military. Later, in the military office, the chief slammed a paper with Kinmo's picture on the desk, demanding to know what was going on with the Spiritual Energy Cultivation Association. He accused them of allowing not only a monster to be raised by one of their cultivators but also of letting military soldiers be used as test subjects. The representative before him protested that the commander-in-chief's statement was misleading, claiming ignorance of Kinmo's actions and explaining that the man had been a long-standing top performer of the association, beyond his authority to interfere with. The chief sharply retorted that this hands-off attitude was exactly why the situation had spiraled. The representative insisted he was just an ordinary man with no power over cultivators, unable to risk offending either the association or the military, and pleaded for the chief to consider his position. The chief, voice cold, asked if he could repeat such excuses to the grieving families of the soldiers who had died horribly because of that monster. The man's expression faltered under the weight of the words, and the chief warned that from that day forward, all members of the association would be barred from military cooperation, with noncompliance risking punishment under military law. The representative, now pale, saluted and promised full cooperation with the investigation, only begging that the association's reputation not be completely destroyed, as that could lead to his death at the hands of cultivators. The chief agreed but ordered him to ensure that all cultivators cooperated obediently. Bowing deeply, the man gave a firm acknowledgement. Shinji finally reached home and pushed open the gate, greeted first by Yu asking if he was hurt, then by Fuma warmly welcoming him back. Looking at the two girls, he thought to himself that so this was what it felt like to have a family, and it wasn't bad at all, worth protecting, even if it meant becoming stronger. Fuma snapped him out of his thoughts, asking why he was spacing out, and he replied that he had completed the subjugation mission and even brought back a pet. Yu looked puzzled at the word pet, and when Shinji whistled, the owl swooped down to perch on his head. Both girls lit up at the sight, calling it cute and taking turns petting it, asking where he had found such an adorable creature. Shinji, while opening a can, explained that he had picked it up at the villa where he completed his mission. Yu remarked that surviving in such a place meant it must have had a strong will to live, and Shinji agreed, adding that it was originally a bubbling spring level 6 peak mutant beast. The girls froze, asking him to repeat himself, and when he did, they both recoiled in shock, shouting that a level 6 mutant beast could eat them alive. Yu warned Fuma not to move, saying it could take them both out in one hit. Shinji waved off their fear, explaining that it was docile now and that if it had any hostility, they would have been done for already. He told them they should be more worried about their own training progress. Yu protested that they were doing their best, but progress wasn't so quick, and Fuma added that they couldn't be compared to a genius like him. Shinji stretched, telling them to just keep training, or next time, help might not arrive in time, before heading off to rest. Elsewhere, three men were eating dinner when one mentioned hearing that the strongest cultivator in Amanami city had been killed. Another, drinking, said it was deserved for the number of comrades he had slain. The third questioned how such a high-level cultivator, bubbling spring level 6 peak, could have died, suggesting it must have been a level 7 mutant beast. One dismissed the idea, saying such a beast would threaten them all, and they wondered aloud who could have killed him. All eyes turned to the third man, who whispered that rumors said he had been killed by the strongest cultivator from Amanami City, the same one who had resolved the city's recent crisis. The first two erupted in disbelief, but their chatter was cut short when General Gento walked in, asking what all the fuss was about. They quickly stood and explained it was just shift change and drinks. Gento warned them that any details about the Amanami city cultivator were classified military information and must not be leaked. They saluted, promising to comply, and he dismissed them, silently noting that none of them truly understood Shinji's strength, or how his power could influence the country's standing on an international scale. Fuma sat at her laptop when a notification popped up, announcing that the mysterious and strongest cultivator, Shinji, had successfully reclaimed Amanami City alongside the military. Her eyes lit up with a smile, noting it was trending as expected. The online chatter was all about him, countless praises mixed with a fair share of hate comments. She frowned, thinking how the cultivator from Psycho City sure liked to run their mouth. Yu walked in, asking why she was talking to herself, and Fuma explained that someone calling themselves the King of Psycho was claiming to be a bubbling spring level 7 cultivator, and had challenged Shinji to the military art tournament. Yu, surprised, said it was the first time she had heard of such a thing. Fuma admitted she had just learned about it too, explaining that their grandfather had ordered a nationwide strongest cultivator tournament to inspire cultivators across the country to train harder and protect national security. She declared that Shinji absolutely had to win. Meanwhile, Shinji was busy petting the owl, urging it to eat, saying he had bought expensive feed for it. The owl acted haughty, prompting him to warn that if it preferred small animals, it could go hunt them itself, otherwise it should eat quietly. Yu brought up the martial art tournament, and Shinji turned, saying flatly that he wasn't interested and wouldn't go. He was busy. Both Yu and Fuma pressed him on what could be more important than such a tournament. Annoyed, he shot back that what mattered was restoring the villa in Amanami City as quickly as possible, and that he was determined to move out before his home was completely turned into a hotel for the two of them. In the round meeting at the office, one member questioned why Shinji was not participating, and another echoed the curiosity. Light explained that, according to the deputy commander, Shinji was occupied with renovating his villa and had no interest in the martial art tournament. One man remarked that it was good news since his absence would reduce hassle, but the chief cut in, asking what he meant. The man replied that with fewer participants, any event would be easier to manage. The chief warned him to watch his words, reminding everyone that the tournament was not only a platform for cultivators to compete but also a way to discover new talent, and without a genius like Shinji, they would struggle against cultivators from other countries. Another man pointed out that Shinji's personality made him indifferent to things like honor, and someone else agreed. The chief, displeased, asked if they were simply giving up, saying the country would suffer immeasurable loss without him. A suggestion came to lure him with rare cultivation resources, but it was noted that the military only controlled low-level spirit mutation zones, and since Shinji was likely at bubbling spring level 7, such rewards would not tempt him. The chairman then proposed that Amanami City, which still had dangerous mutation zones beyond Green Lake, could use the tournament as an opportunity, gather the strongest cultivators from across the nation and have them resolve the super mutant level mutation zone there. If successful, the city's full urban function would be restored, and the feat would shock foreign cultivators, since no country had ever cleared such a zone before. The others praised the idea, but one man immediately objected, refusing to take such responsibility and insisting they try in another city, perhaps neighboring Psycho. The chief told him not to get so worked up, saying the proposal was bold but rejecting it outright would get them nowhere, and with thorough safety measures, nothing too severe should happen. The man grew tense, arguing that every time safety measures were promised, things ended in chaos, and begged them not to proceed, claiming he was near retirement and wanted a peaceful life. The chief reminded him that as chairman of the Amanami City Spiritual Energy Cultivator Association, his reluctance over a tournament vital to the country was far from admirable. The man exhaled heavily, conceding that it made no difference what he said, agreeing to proceed and adding that further objections were pointless. The chief thanked the chairman for his proposal and moved on to selecting personnel for the tournament's executive committee. Meanwhile, the chairman quietly considered that this event might bring them closer to uncovering the whereabouts of Shinji's parents. Back at home, Shinji sat on his bed, his entire body enveloped in a radiant yellow aura, eyes glowing with the same fierce light. The energy around him crackled as if he had been struck by a powerful current. With a steady breath, he murmured that he had finally reached bubbling spring level 9, and that just one more step would take him to the next major stage, Iron Meridian. Shinji sits on the sofa reading when the doorbell rings, making him wonder who it could be. Opening the door, he finds Mrs. Sugita, who greets him warmly and says it has been a while. He asks why she's visiting so early, and she explains she came to deliver his reward and get his signature on some necessary paperwork. Inviting her in, he listens as she thanks him and sits on the sofa, laying out documents prepared by the military. She explains they include the ownership transfer and re-registration for the villa, the renovation cost estimate, and an application for additional living expenses, assuring him that once he signs, they will handle the rest. He thanks her while reading through the papers, but she adds there is another important matter she wishes to discuss. He guesses it's about the military tournament, and she admits it is. He asks for details, explaining he hadn't paid much attention when you and the others mentioned it before. She tells him the venue has been decided, the super mutant level anomaly in Amanami. Surprised, he questions if Amanami is really that dangerous. She explains that the city sits at the intersection of spiritual veins, and since the recovery of spiritual energy, it has been oversaturated, creating numerous hazardous anomalies. Hearing this, he remarks that it explains the many problems in the city. She agrees, saying that restoring Amanami's urban function would be great news for cultivators nationwide. According to their information, the super mutant anomaly contains extremely pure lightning-attributed spiritual energy. He reacts to the mention of lightning, and she confirms that the concentration is said to be very high, adding that all the details are in the documents. Realizing they are preparing him meticulously to join the tournament, he remarks as much, but she quickly tells him not to misunderstand. He cuts her off, saying there's no need to be tense, and that he will decide after reviewing the documents. She stands, thanking him and telling him to contact them anytime if he has questions. Shinji arrives carrying a meal and cheerfully calls out that it's time to eat. Fumo shuffles and wearing a nightdress, complaining about being sleepy, while Yu follows, responding that she's coming. As they sit, he opens the meal and mentions that the documents from the military about the martial arts tournament arrived that morning, along with material on the rewards for their last mission. When both glance at the papers, Fumo brightens and wonders aloud if her grandfather might have given them a military rank or something similar. Shinji replies it's nothing so extravagant, just paperwork for a villa and an estimate for the renovation costs. Fumo pouts, calling her grandfather stingy and saying she'll ask him for more land, but he tells her to forget it, wash her face, and eat. Yu silently examines the documents, and one in particular catches her eye. She wonders if it could be related to the anomaly where her parents vanished, questioning whether the military is deliberately withholding information, and for what reason. As Shinji drags Fumo toward the washroom, he notices Yu's interest but thinks it's better if she doesn't get involved. Later, in the gallery, he studies the document that details past explorations of the mutant-level anomaly known as the Thunder Maze. It records that after 4 expeditions, the search team, Hemi Wataru and Hemi Yakina, vanished on the 5th day of a 7-day mission. Yu, their daughter, became the adopted child of Lu Jinghu and is now a spiritual energy cultivator. Shinji calls Mrs. Sugita to say he's decided to go to the anomaly. She thanks him, but as he looks toward the sky, he says he's unhappy with the military's approach. When she asks why, he accuses them of betting that he wouldn't ignore the fact that Yu's parents are connected to the anomaly. She denies it, but he says he can't believe her words. She promises to relay his opinion to the higher-ups, but he warns her to tell them this is the first and last time they use such a tactic, or he may change his mind. She agrees to pass his words along exactly. Hanging up, he walks to the hall where Yu sleeps on the sofa, a notebook open on the table beside her. Gently placing a blanket over her, he thinks to himself that he will definitely find her parents.